Level 1 to 100. Consciousness. Glitches. You missed to fall asleep. To have you ever glitched in your own mind? Not a malfunction, not a dream, but that split-second pause when you forget your own name in the mirror, or feel like a stranger is watching you from inside your eyes. What if those moments aren't errors, but invitations? Invitations to peer behind the veil of what we call reality. Because perhaps what we mistake as everyday consciousness is merely level 1 of 100 hidden layers, each one stitched with paradoxes, emotional echoes, and quantum threads looping in silence. In this journey, we'll drift through those hidden seams where your thoughts stutter, your memories echo, and awareness itself begins to bend. You don't need to understand it all. You just need to feel the space between each breath and let the glitches guide you home. Close your eyes, loosen your mind. Let's fall gently into the mystery. The curtain between waking and dreaming. There's a moment just before sleep takes you, so brief it vanishes as soon as you notice it. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It's not a plunge, not even a step. It's more like a soft unraveling. One thread slips loose from thought, another from time. The room fades. Your name lingers like a shadow in fog. And then, something else begins. A woman on the train once said to no one in particular, "I always know I'm falling asleep when I forget what day it is." Her voice drifted out the window, unnoticed by most. But a man across the aisle smiled quietly to himself. He knew that place. We all do. We call it sleep. But what if it's something else entirely? You don't remember the exact second you stop being you at night. One moment your eyes are heavy. The next, you're running across rooftops in a city that never existed. You're talking to people you've never met. And not once do you stop to ask, why does this feel so real? The boundary between waking and dreaming isn't a wall. It's a curtain. Thin, rippling, half drawn by thought and half by surrender. Some nights, it drifts slowly. Other times, it snatches you like wind. But always, you pass through it unaware. That's the glitch. A small one. Software, but constant. Two friends once waited in silence at a crosswalk long after the light had turned green. One turned to the other and asked, "Have we already crossed?" The other blinked, then laughed. "I don't know anymore." Moments like that, they're not mistakes. They're reminders that maybe consciousness is stitched together by pauses too quick to catch. That awareness isn't a stream, but a series of flickers that your memory smooths into a line. So what if waking life is just another form of dreaming? Not the fantastical kind, but the structured illusion, rules, time, identity, all accepted without question. What if this is just one more version of you, inside another dream? It doesn't mean this world isn't beautiful, or painful, or deeply, achingly real. It only means you might not be as awake as you believe. And that, perhaps, is freedom, not to escape, but to soften your grip on what must be true. You're not broken for drifting. You're not lost for wondering. Let your breath move like tide water, gentle, reluctant, trusting. And if you feel yourself slipping into that unseen space, let it come. You can always return. But tonight, maybe, just for a while, you'll stay on the other side of the curtain. The next idea begins, where memory melts like candle wax and the edges of thought dissolve. The mirror that remembers. You don't just look into a mirror, you enter it. At first, it seems innocent, just a reflection of your face, the lighting of the room bouncing softly off your skin. But wait too long. Keep your gaze steady, and something begins to shift. Not outside, but within. The lines of your face blur, not in sight, but in identity. Suddenly, you're not just seeing yourself, you're being watched by something in the mirror, and what stares back? It's familiar but off. It knows you, but doesn't agree with your version of who you are. There's a strange intimacy to the stillness of that moment, a hesitation in time. The air holds its breath, and you find yourself wondering, has this glass always just been a tool? Or is it a threshold? A mirror, after all, doesn't just show your face. It catches your presence. Not just the details of your features, but the silence behind your eyes, the questions you haven't asked, the feelings you buried. It reflects light, yes, but what if it remembers more? Some psychologists call this phenomenon the strange face illusion. They say, if you stare at your reflection long enough in dim light, your brain will begin to distort your image. Your face morphs, shifts, becomes unfamiliar. It's explained away by neural fatigue. But what if, instead of a malfunction, it's a message? Philosophers, ancient and modern, have whispered of the mirror not just as object, but as symbol, a site of confrontation, a place where the self meets its shadow. In Eastern thought, the mirror represents the polished mind, still and clear, revealing things as they truly are. But in the West, it often serves as a riddle. Can you know yourself without distortion? Hey, do you ever feel weird when you stare in the mirror too long? What do you mean? Like insecure? No. Like something else is looking back. Like it knows more than I do. Yeah, that's why I don't do it anymore. It feels like the mirror remembers things I forgot. It's in those quiet exchanges, those subtle shivers, that the deeper truth hums. Maybe the glitch isn't in the mirror or in your mind. Maybe it's in the illusion that we are ever fully in control of our self-perception. Perhaps what's eerie isn't that the reflection distorts, but that it reveals. That face you see, tired eyes, faint smile, flicker of hesitation. It tells a story even you've stopped reading. When we gaze too long, we start to see not the polished version of ourselves, but the frayed edges, the undone, the past selves we've outgrown, or never got to become. The mirror doesn't judge, but it remembers. It holds still, even when we try to forget. So, let the gaze soften now. Don't force clarity. Let the image blur just enough that what's reflected feels less like a photo and more like a dream you half remember. The mirror has done its part. The next glitch waits, not in glass, but in memory. In folds of time your mind hasn't smoothed out yet. Close your eyes. The reflection follows you. The voice in your head isn't yours. Sometimes in the quiet just before sleep, you notice it. Not the ticking clock, not the hum of the room, but something quieter. A voice, software familiar, unquestioned. And yet, whose voice is it? It speaks with conviction, as if it knows you, as if it is you. But lean in closer. Beneath the words, there's an accent, a rhythm that doesn't quite belong to you, a choice of phrasing you never consciously made. A woman once sat in a cafe, staring into her tea. Her friend across the table finally asked, "What are you thinking?" She hesitated. "My father used to say, this kind of day meant trouble." Her friend smiled. "But do you believe that?" That's the kind of question that doesn't just hang in the air. It changes it, because we all carry voices inside us, teachers, parents, friends who once mocked us, lovers who once praised us, commercials, stories, street whispers overheard when we were too young to filter. And those voices don't fade. They layer, they echo. They become the wallpaper of our thoughts. You call it an inner monologue, but it's more like a chorus, rehearsing someone else's lines. You think, I shouldn't say that. It sounds weak. But who taught you what weak sounds like? He once tried to write a poem. 2 lines in, he stopped. A voice in his head laughed, not loudly, but just enough to make his hands go still. It wasn't his laugh. It was someone else's memory, wearing his skin. So ask yourself gently, if this inner dialogue was built from borrowed fragments stitched together over decades, then what part is truly yours? Where is the voice that wasn't handed to you? Maybe that's why silence can feel terrifying. It leaves space for the real voice to surface. And if you're not sure what your own voice sounds like, silence might be the only place left to find it. She said once, quietly to her partner before bed, "Sometimes I wonder if I've ever had an original thought." He reached out, touching her hand with a warmth that didn't need an answer. And maybe that's enough, not to silence the voices, but to hear them without believing they define you. If thoughts are mosaics of influence, then your awareness, the one listening to the voice, is where you begin. Not the thought, not the voice, but the watcher of the voice, the quiet space behind it. So if tonight a harsh word floats up uninvited, or a tired command, "You always do this wrong," gently let it pass. It's not a truth. It's a ghost of a voice playing an old tape. You're not the tape. You're the one pressing pause. And now, listen even closer. Let the chatter fade. Because the next glitch isn't spoken at all. It lives in the hush before the next thought forms. A whisper in the shape of nothing, yet everything. Close your eyes. You're already there. The pause that thinks before you do. There's a space inside you, a space so fleeting, so quiet, most people never even notice it. A pause. It comes after something happens and just before you react. Neurologists have studied it. Philosophers have written pages trying to catch it like fireflies in a jar. This pause is not just empty time. It's a doorway, a breath in the hallway between cause and effect. And what if that small crack in the wall of reaction is where the real you begins? Some call it the readiness potential, that odd moment when your brain lights up before you're aware you've made a choice. As if the machinery of thought has already spun its gears before your consciousness catches up. A friend once said, "I think I decided to say yes, but sometimes I wonder if my body knew before I did." And that's the riddle, isn't it? Who really made the decision? Was it you, or was it your momentum? Now picture this. You're walking down a street. Someone bumps your shoulder, hard. The reflex is to react, maybe glare, maybe snap. But imagine being able to pause, not to suppress the emotion, but to stretch the moment, to feel everything, and still choose. That pause, if you notice it, becomes a kind of magic trick. It slows time. It hands you back the steering wheel, even for a second. And maybe in that second, you aren't just reacting. You're becoming. There's a moment in every breath when the inhale has ended and the exhale hasn't yet begun. That still point, where nothing happens and everything could. That's where awareness lives. In meditation, they tell you to rest there, to lean into the silence between thoughts. Because in that gap, you're not your habits, you're not your trauma, you're just aware. Light touching water before it ripples. Do you ever feel like something inside you moves before you do? She asked over tea one night. He looked up slowly, thoughtful. Sometimes, like I catch myself halfway through reacting, and then wonder, was that really me? or just the me I've always been? Maybe both, she said, smiling. But maybe the pause is the space where we get to rewrite it. It's not about fighting the reflex. It's about witnessing it, naming it, and then, maybe, gently choosing otherwise. The pause becomes less like a traffic light and more like an artist's canvas. Not a block, but a possibility. Some of the wisest decisions we make are born not in words, but in that wordless second before thought takes form. So before the next thought forms a sentence, before the next feeling colors your mind, ask yourself, are you watching, or are you already swept away? That pause, subtle as morning fog, might just be your first glimpse of freedom, not the loud kind that demands change, but the soft kind that whispers choice. Take that moment, stretch it, let it linger like a soft note at the end of a song. And now, take a breath. Let the next idea rise, if it still wants to. The forgotten thought that shapes you. Sometimes before sleep takes you, a memory drifts in, not vivid, not clear, but familiar. A flicker of something that shaped you before you even had a name for yourself. It doesn't speak in words. It lives in gestures, in tone, in the way your body reacts to tension or praise. Somewhere in you is a thought that isn't yours, not fully. It might belong to a parent's warning, a teacher's glance, a playground silence. And even though you've long forgotten where it came from, it still whispers instructions, like a background script that never got deleted. A man once said while waiting in line, "I always stand like this when I feel out of place." The stranger beside him just nodded slowly and replied, "Funny. I always make a joke when I feel the same." Neither asked why. Neither realized they were echoing the same childhood moment, just with different disguises. That's the nature of the forgotten thought. It doesn't shout. It shapes. You believe you choose to hesitate before sending that message, or decline that invitation, or not speak your mind. But often, something else chooses for you. A belief you never consented to. It's like finding a locked door in your own home and realizing you've never asked what's behind it. And still, you decorate around it. You live around it. Psychologists call this implicit memory or core schema. But beneath the clinical name is something hauntingly poetic, a ghost code. A line written long ago, still executing in the background of your every choice. You may no longer recall the original lesson, but the rule remains. Be quiet to be safe. Don't need too much. Love means waiting. And so you do. But what if that thought isn't true anymore? What if it was never yours to begin with? Tonight, as the hum of your thoughts begins to soften, you may feel a gentle tension rise. Not anxiety, but curiosity, a quiet wondering. What else have I obeyed without knowing? Not to punish, not to judge, but to notice. A woman once paused before speaking, looked down at her tea and said, "Sometimes I think I avoid good things because I learned early that joy doesn't last." Her friend leaned forward, not to fix it, just to listen. "That's a hard rule to unlearn," she added. "It is," the woman nodded. "But I think I've started by noticing it's there. You don't have to rewrite the script tonight, but maybe you can name it, trace its handwriting. Know that not every thought that moves through you belongs to you. And with that awareness, a new kind of silence emerges, not emptiness, but space, the kind where something new might grow. Let's stay here a little longer, in the soft pause between remembering and becoming, because the next layer down, that's where the truths you almost forgot still breathe. still waiting. When time loops without telling you. It happens so quietly you almost miss it. A moment arrives, not spectacular, not loud, just a flicker. You enter a room you swear you've never seen, yet your body reacts as if it remembers. A scent pulls you inward, a shadow stretches like a memory across the wall, and your breath adjusts as though rehearsed. You pause, you look around. Something deep inside whispers, "I've been here before." But you haven't, have you? Déjà vu. Most people shrug it off. They say it's just a brain glitch, a misfire in neural timing, an overlap of short-term and long-term memory. But if it's just that, why does it feel so hauntingly perfect? Why does the moment feel wrapped in a fog of cosmic recognition, as though the world is repeating a single second and you're the only one awake to catch it? "It happened again today," she says, "at the coffee shop." "What did?" he asks, distracted by his phone. "I looked at the window and I knew what the man outside was about to do. I knew how the light would hit the sugar jar. I even knew you'd say, 'What did?'" He looks up, blinking. "Okay, that's creepy." "I know," she says, rubbing her temples. "It felt like I was living a rerun I never watched the first time. Is it time folding in on itself? Or something deeper? Perhaps our minds are not linear machines, but woven fabrics, loose in some places, stitched tightly in others, snagged on invisible loops where past and present touch for an instant. Some scientists call déjà vu an error of familiarity without source. But what if it's not an error at all? What if it's the system reminding us? Or worse, repeating us? The old mystics believed that life unfolds in spirals, not straight lines, but returning circles, each pass bringing you to the same lesson until it is fully lived. Maybe déjà vu is not a flaw in perception, but a thread from a deeper tapestry pulling through, a whisper from another timeline, a version of you who did this once, or a signal that you're crossing into a space outside time. Even the simulation theorists have their explanation. They say déjà vu is a lag in rendering, like reality catching up to your awareness, a hiccup in the code, you, the player, noticing the pattern beneath the play. But maybe, just maybe, it's something simpler and more human. A soul memory. Something that doesn't live in your neurons but lives through them. A moment your consciousness recognizes not because it has seen it before, but because it's been waiting for it to return. "I don't like it," he says later that night. "It makes me feel like I'm not real." "You are," she answers, gently brushing his hand. "But maybe not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "Maybe we're real, in layers, like echoes that learn how to speak." He doesn't reply. The silence stretches. Familiar. As your eyes grow heavier, let this thought drift with you. What if déjà vu isn't a mistake, but a map, not of where you've been, but of where you were always going to arrive? Don't worry if the next moment feels familiar. We're just stepping into the part of the mind where memory bends, where we ask not what you remember, but why you trust memory at all. Your memories aren't yours alone. You close your eyes, and there it is. A birthday party, balloons, laughter, that strange taste of blue frosting. But pause. That memory. When did you first recall it? Was it from your own eyes, or through a photograph, a video, a retelling by someone else who smiled as they filled in the blanks for you? There's a kind of softness in memory, like wet clay. We believe it sets, becomes permanent. But science disagrees. The moment you recall something, you're already rewriting it. Your brain doesn't retrieve memories like files. It reweaves them, each time, with threads that feel familiar but shift ever so slightly. Over time, your life becomes a collage, not just of lived moments, but of borrowed details, cultural echoes, and emotions handed down like second-hand clothes. In a quiet room, two friends speak between sips of tea. Do you remember that summer at the lake? You mean the one with the red canoe? I don't think it was red. I think it was blue. They laugh. But beneath the laughter is a subtle disorientation. Which one of them is right? Or have they both edited their pasts for comfort? This isn't just nostalgia. It's something deeper. A psychological vulnerability that turns your mind into an open-air market where images and emotions are constantly traded. A story you've heard 1,000 times about your childhood, your country, your faith, seeps in slowly until you can't tell where the narrative ends and you begin. Even mundane moments blur this line. Someone stops you at a crosswalk and says, "Didn't we meet before at that bookstore downtown?" You hesitate. Part of you wants to say no, but part of you wonders, maybe? You smile politely, and the seed is planted. A memory that wasn't yours becomes a possibility, then a picture, then a truth. Sometimes we accept stories because they come with warmth, because they explain things that otherwise don't fit, because they make us feel like we belong. And other times, we accept them simply because no one ever told us not to. A young woman once told a therapist, "I remember being comforted during a thunderstorm by my grandmother. I remember her perfume, her words." The therapist paused. "But your grandmother passed before you were born." She blinked. "I know, but I still remember." Was it a family story that took root? Or something older, something collective, reaching out through genetic memory or imagination's tender mimicry? What this reveals isn't failure, it's complexity. A beautiful, bewildering glitch of human consciousness. Our memories don't sit behind locked doors. They walk through hallways shared with others. They dance with myths. They whisper back the things we want to hear, reshaped to fit the music we believe in. And if that's true, then who are you? Beneath the edits, beneath the inherited dreams and cinematic flashbacks, are you the narrator or the narrative? A soft wind moves through the curtain as you lie there, listening, not to an answer, but to the question itself, slowly unfurling across the quiet inside your chest. And maybe that's the point, not to know for sure, but to be gentle with the uncertainty. Let that question linger like a scent you almost recognize but can't place. The next glitch isn't hiding in the past, but in something far more deceptive. It hides in what you mistake for truth. The lie you need to believe to stay awake. Each morning arrives like a soft promise, quiet, ordinary, unassuming. The sky doesn't announce that you are closer to your last breath. The mirror doesn't whisper that time is finite. Instead, it hands you the same comforting illusion you've held since childhood, that you'll be here forever. It's not a conscious thought. It's deeper. It's in the way you wash your face, the way you scroll through unread messages, the way you imagine next week, next month, next year, as if next is guaranteed. The truth is, the brain doesn't wake up unless it's lied to first. And the most effective lie, the one you whisper to yourself without words, is this: I still have time. You build your world around that lie. Every plan you make assumes a future self who will carry it out. The version of you who will finish the book. Call your parents. Learn to forgive. Someday, when life slows down, when the mood is right, later. But later is architecture, a structure that keeps your day from collapsing under the weight of reality. The belief in tomorrow is not just emotional, it's neurochemical, ritualistic. You have to believe in it to keep functioning. This cognitive illusion, this glitch of human design, is less a flaw and more a necessity. Without it, how would you schedule meetings, raise a child, love someone long enough to see the hard days through? And yet, there's a cost, because when you believe in forever, you stop noticing the now. You postpone meaning. You tolerate boredom. You let moments drift by, thinking they'll circle back. But what if they don't? Do you ever think about it? She asks, pouring coffee, her voice still soft from sleep. About what? He replies, eyes half lost in the steam rising from the cup. That one day, we won't do this anymore. This exact moment, this breakfast, this version of us. He pauses, spoon hovering above the bowl. Number, I guess I try not to. Me too, she nods, a small smile. But sometimes I wonder what would change if we stopped pretending. To pretend is to survive, but to stop pretending, that's where awareness begins. There's a gentle terror in acknowledging that you won't live forever. Not the kind that sparks panic, but the kind that softens your gaze, that makes you sit longer with someone, that urges you to say what you've delayed too long. That kind of truth doesn't need to be shouted, it just needs to be held. The lie of immortality keeps you alert, but not awake. Truly waking up might mean giving up that safety, letting in the fragile, beautiful reality that each breath is a closing window, and in that closing, something opens. The question then isn't whether you'll die. You will. The question is whether you're willing to live, really live, without the guarantee of later. So maybe tonight, as the quiet settles and your mind drifts, you can hold that idea gently, not as fear, but as invitation. Would you live differently if later vanished? If this moment, this very breath, was the only one that truly belonged to you, let's step softly now, into that delicate space where endings already live, curled secretly inside every beginning. Let the illusion melt. Let the breath slow. The next idea is waiting, already aware that nothing lasts and everything matters. The glitch called you. There's something curious about the word I. It rolls off your tongue like it knows who you are, as if there's a clear, solid shape behind it. But close your eyes, follow the thread inward, and suddenly, it blurs. The sense of being someone, that subtle hum of identity, begins to dissolve like fog under sunlight. I feels real because it narrates your day. It chooses what to wear, what to eat, who to smile at in the hallway. But when scientists go looking for it, deep in the folds of the brain, they find electrical storms and neural choreography, but no captain at the helm, no throne where the self sits, just activity, just processes, like a song that plays itself. One evening, in a quiet cafe near closing time, two people sat sharing tea. One asked gently, "Do you ever feel like you're just watching yourself live?" The other smiled, slowly stirring their cup. "Sometimes, like I'm the memory of myself, pretending to still be here." That's the paradox. The you that speaks is not the same you that dreams, and the one who dreams is not the one who listens when you cry alone in the shower. So who's real? Maybe all of them, maybe none. Philosophy tried to name it, the self, the soul, the ego, but the definitions were like hands grasping water. And neuroscience, it calls it a model, a constructed illusion, a useful hallucination between the inner world and the outer one, a kind of avatar constantly updated but never quite complete. You say, "I feel sad." But who is the I doing the feeling? A stream of perceptions? A bundle of reactions? Or perhaps just language, shaping the mind like a river-shaped stone? Even in daily life, you might notice it. That gentle dissonance between who you thought you were and how you just acted. The you that says, "I would never yell," and the you that did. The glitch isn't a malfunction. It's a mirror showing that you are not one thing, but many fragments, stitched together by time and memory. Still, it doesn't make you false. It makes you fluid. There's grace in this recognition. If the self is a story, then it can be rewritten, not by denial, but by curiosity, by gently asking, "Who am I today?" and listening not for an answer, but for the silence behind the question. A man once walked into a library, not to read, but to breathe. He didn't need a book to feel real, just the weight of presence in a quiet space. That, too, was a kind of I. So maybe you don't have to hold on so tightly to being someone. Maybe you are already enough as the witness, the listener, the shifting awareness behind each thought. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the softness lives. Not in having a self, but in noticing that you never needed one to be whole. Let your breath soften. Let the story rest. You don't need to know who you are right now. The next glitch gently opens the door to a stranger thought. Who is watching the watcher? The observer behind the thought. It begins so softly you barely notice. A thought, then another, then the whisper of something watching, not with eyes, but with presence. Meditation calls it the witness, not the voice in your head, but the one listening to the voice. Not the river, but the still bank it flows past. And the longer you rest there, the more you begin to feel its quiet eyes, even when yours are closed. Do you ever feel like there's a you behind the you? Like when I catch myself worrying and think, why am I even thinking this? Exactly, like I'm two people at once, the one thinking and the one watching it happen. That second self, the silent one, isn't shouting, it's observing. Science calls this metacognition, the ability to think about thought itself. But it's more than just a brain trick. It's the space in which thought is noticed, the space that doesn't collapse under emotion, the one that doesn't judge the thought, just sees it, then lets it go like a leaf carried by wind. And if you can notice your thought, then you can't be the thought. That's the paradox. You are not your worries, not your plans, not even the memory of today's disappointments. You are the one who noticed them rise and watched them fall. The screen, not the film. The sky, not the weather. The observer behind the noise. Close your eyes now. Let a thought pass. Notice it. Then notice that you noticed. Who is that? It isn't your voice. It isn't your childhood. It isn't your fear. It isn't your desire. It's something else. Untouched. Like silence that remembers music long after the song is over. And if the thoughts stop, what remains? There's no panic in that question, only curiosity. And in that stillness, something rare begins to shimmer. A different kind of knowing, not made of words, not made of reasons, just presence, awareness without agenda, consciousness resting in itself, not trying to fix, solve, label, or run. This is not where answers live. It's where the need for answers rests. Do you think that's the real self, that silent watcher? I don't know, but it feels more like me than the voice in my head ever did. Maybe that's what ancient traditions meant when they spoke of awakening. Not waking up, but waking back. Returning to what sees without speaking, what lives quietly behind the curtain, always watching the performance, but never needing to join the stage. So take this moment to soften. Let the chatter settle like snow at the bottom of a globe. No shaking, no stirring, just breathe and presence. Because what comes next isn't a movement, it's the awareness of all movement. A new kind of glitch, one that doesn't loop or echo or distort. It simply watches. Now, breathe. Stillness comes next. When the world blinks first, it begins quietly. A soft hum from the refrigerator, the buzz of a ceiling light, the way your sweater touches your wrist. At first, you feel everything, but then, without a sound, it all disappears, not because it's gone, but because you stopped noticing. There's a name for this trick the brain plays: sensory adaptation. A filter so subtle it feels like mercy. The mind, trying to protect you from overload, starts erasing anything that stays still too long. What doesn't move doesn't matter. What doesn't change vanishes. The scratch on the table, the ticking of a clock, the weight of your own body resting against the mattress, all of it, quietly edited out. And in that pause, you blink. But here's the twist. What if it's not just your senses that adapt, but your very reality? Two people sit in a dim cafe, speaking softly over coffee. Did you ever notice, one says, how the sound of the air conditioner disappears after a while? The other leans in. Or how sometimes you forget you're even breathing until someone reminds you. There's a silence, not awkward, just honest. That's the moment awareness returns, like light slipping under a closed door. It raises a question we can't answer easily, because it stirs something old and unspoken in us. If the world fades when you stop paying attention, was it ever really there, waiting? Or are you the projector, and reality just the screen? Maybe both, maybe neither. But there's another possibility. One that doesn't ask you to solve it, only to notice it. What if the fading isn't a loss, but a gift? The brain, in its quiet wisdom, teaches you where not to look so that you may see more clearly where you should. It pairs the edges, blurs the noise, whispers, "Focus here." And just like that, you find yourself in a grocery store, standing in line, and someone ahead turns and asks, "Hey, do you mind if I go first? I've only got one item." You nod. You weren't really in a rush. But something shifts. You become aware again of the line, the floor, your feet, the hum of everyday being. That moment, the pause when your attention returns, feels like a door unlocking. So much of life disappears not because it leaves, but because you've taught yourself not to see it anymore. Like the way sunlight rests on the rim of a cup, like the familiar voice that stops surprising you, like the old scar you no longer trace with your fingers. Sometimes the world blinks first, and sometimes you do. Neither is wrong. Both are invitations. So if you've noticed your thoughts soften now, if the lines between outside and inside begin to blur, let them. Let the wall clock fade. Let the still fan hum itself into silence. Let your own fingers become strangers to your attention, because what matters next isn't what remains. It's what was missing, and returns gently when you do. Now, soften your gaze. Let go of the sharpness. In the fading light, a new question stirs, not from what's seen, but from what quietly slipped away. Sleep, too, is a kind of adaptation, and the world is patient. It will wait until you blink back. The space that thinks for you. There's a strange kind of silence between your thoughts, a soft, shimmering quiet that isn't really silent at all. It hums gently beneath the surface, like the hush of a forest before dawn. And from that space, thought arises, not built, not constructed piece by piece, but arriving whole, effortless, unbidden. A sentence completes itself before you even realize you are forming one. A memory drifts in without a knock. An idea perches softly, like a bird that doesn't ask your permission before landing on your windowsill. "Hey, do you ever choose what you think next?" she asked, her voice muffled by the pillow, eyes still half closed in the early dark. He turned slowly toward her. "Not really. It just shows up, like a notification. Only without the ding." She smiled. "Exactly. Isn't that kind of creepy? Or beautiful?" he said. "Like the mind is listening to something deeper, something that doesn't use words. It's tempting to believe you are the author of your thoughts, that there's a small person behind the curtain of your eyes, typing ideas onto the screen of your awareness. But sit still for a while. Watch. Don't try to force anything, and you'll see. Thoughts bloom without effort. They're not summoned like soldiers. They rise like steam from a cup left out in the cold. This realization shifts the ground under your feet. If you didn't create the thought, if it simply arrived, who is the thinker? And if you're not the thinker, then what exactly are you? The answer doesn't come easily, or maybe it doesn't come at all, because this question isn't meant to be answered. It's meant to be lived with, like a koan whispered by the universe, gently nudging you into deeper awareness. Maybe consciousness isn't a captain steering a ship. Maybe it's the ocean itself, watching waves rise and fall, not controlling them, not predicting them, just aware, just present. Sometimes when you lie awake in the dark, your mind still racing even though your body pleads for sleep, a single odd thought arrives, unrelated, mysterious. You blink at it, wondering, where did that come from? And yet it fits. It belongs. Not because it was planned, but because it was part of the current. The more we observe the mind this way, the less we identify with its contents. Thoughts aren't possessions, they're visitors. Some stay longer than others. Some knock over the furniture. Others tiptoe in, leave a gift, and vanish. "Do you think we're ever really in control?" she whispered later, half asleep again. He thought about it for a while before answering. Maybe control is a story the mind tells itself to feel safe. She didn't reply, already drifting off, but the silence between them felt like a response. Now, as your breath softens and your body settles deeper into the quiet, let yourself fall gently into that space, the one that's always been there, the one that notices but does not command, that sees but does not push. You do not need to summon anything. The next thought will come, or it won't, and either way, you will remain, not as the voice speaking, but as the space that listens. And now, let go of needing to find the next idea. Let wonder bring it to you instead. The stranger in the mirror of dreams. You're half asleep, drifting somewhere between yesterday's thoughts and tomorrow's worries, when suddenly, there's a face. Not yours, not anyone you know, but somehow, they know you. The way they looked at you, the way they said your name without your permission. It wasn't fear you felt, it was recognition. Maybe it was the curve of their jaw, or the way their voice curled like steam. You try to place them in your memory, but there's nothing, and yet, everything. You sit in bed, blinking at the ceiling. Why do I feel like I've lost someone I never met? There's no answer, only that echo, that face, already slipping. A man once told his wife, "I saw you in my dream last night, but you weren't you." She smiled and asked, "Was I better?" He paused. "You were realer." Science will tell you dreams are assembled from pieces, faces glimpsed on sidewalks, in crowds, in the blur between subway stations. But if that's true, why do some faces feel like portals? Like they didn't come from memory, but from somewhere parallel, whispering in reverse? You've met them too, haven't you? The woman with the silent laugh, the child who ran past you in a hallway that never existed, the man sitting at your kitchen table, drinking coffee he never asked for, but you made anyway. You wake with your heart still warm from a conversation your waking life never had. It's tempting to explain it away. Pattern recognition gone rogue, a neurological patchwork quilt. But what if the mind, in dreams, stretches out like mist, brushing against other minds doing the same? What if your dreams are less like private theaters and more like train stations at midnight, where every platform leaks into the next? That stranger might not be a stranger. Maybe they're a ripple from someone else's sleep, or maybe you're theirs. The barista wipes down the counter, looks up, and says, "You've been here before, haven't you?" You hesitate. "I don't think so." But your hands already know where the sugar jar is. Psychologists call it cryptomnesia, remembering without knowing you're remembering. But poets call it déjà rêvé, the dream remembered before it ever happens. Both sound equally impossible, which makes them equally precious. You don't have to believe any of this, but next time someone visits you in sleep and leaves behind the scent of something half-true, let them stay a while. Let the unknown be your guest. Because maybe, just maybe, your consciousness isn't walled off. Maybe it's porous, gentle, curious, capable of welcoming more than just what's yours. The next time you dream and they look at you like an old friend, don't ask, "Who are you?" Ask, "How long have we been missing each other?" Now close those dream eyes gently. The next glitch is waiting, not in the stranger's face, but in the patterns your waking mind wasn't supposed to notice. Sleep is still near, and something familiar is already watching. You never see your own face. You've looked into mirrors, you've studied photos, maybe even watched videos of yourself speaking, blinking, laughing. And yet, despite all of this, you have never, not once, seen your own face. Not the way others have. It's a strange truth, one that rarely enters conscious thought. The image you hold of yourself, the face you think you wear, is always secondhand. A flipped version in a mirror, a frozen moment in a photo, a pixelated memory from a screen, but never from your own direct perspective. You are the only person in your life who has never seen you as you truly appear. "Wait," one voice says softly in the dim room. "So you're saying I don't actually know what I look like?" "Not in the way others do," the other answers gently. "Not in the way that counts outside your imagination." It's almost laughable, isn't it? In a world obsessed with self-image, filters, and appearance, our foundational identity, our face, is forever out of reach. We chase reflections as if they're truth. We analyze smiles, wrinkles, angles, shadows, but they're all approximations, replicas, not the original, not the version the world sees when it meets your gaze across a dinner table or catches you walking past on the street. And that ungraspable face, that mystery, it holds power. Because if your face is part of your identity and you've never truly seen it, then who, exactly, is constructing your self-image? Is it you? Or is it a collage of external perceptions, pieced together like a puzzle with missing corners? In this quiet realization, the mind begins to slow. Thoughts, once racing, now meander like fog through tall grass. What else about you has never been fully seen? What traits, what fears, what beauty, what trauma lie etched into the version of you others perceive, yet remain hidden even from your inner eye? And deeper still, what if the person you believe yourself to be is merely the echo of someone you've never met? The room falls still for a moment. No buzz, no voice. Just breathe. Do you think it matters? The first voice wonders aloud. That I can't see my own face? The answer comes after a pause. Maybe not to the world, but maybe to the soul that's searching for itself in every reflection. It does. That soft ache, that glitch in the self, is not a flaw. It's a doorway. It's the gentle tug that reminds you are not fully knowable, even to yourself. And in that gap between what you think you are and what you can never fully perceive, lives a kind of freedom, a kind of mystery, a kind of grace. So rest now in the unknown contours of your own identity. Let go of the need to see yourself completely, because what comes next is even stranger. A memory you never had, a moment that never occurred, but still leaves fingerprints in your mind. Close your imaginary eyes. We're about to slip into the next layer, where memory and illusion braid themselves into one. The event that never was. You never said it, but you feel like you did. You never walk that path, but you carry its dust anyway. You never touch that life, but it touches you quietly from within. Somewhere in the folds of thought, there's a ghost you didn't invite, a version of you that turned left instead of right, who stayed instead of leaving, who confessed instead of hesitating. And though it never happened, never truly unfolded, you still remember the shape of it, like remembering the scent of rain in a drought, or the feeling of laughter from a dream you never had. Late at night, this version of you sometimes leans against the wall of your thoughts, not asking for attention, just existing, quiet, persistent, a non-event with a weight heavier than memory. Two strangers speak softly in a dim train station. One says, "You ever get that feeling like you missed something, but it was yours?" The other nods without turning. All the time, like there was a conversation I should have had, and somehow I still carry the silence it left behind. These almost moments live inside us, not because they happened, but because they could have. Possibility leaves traces, like footprints in wet cement. You stepped away before it dried, but the imprint remains. Psychologists call it counterfactual thinking. Your brain runs simulations of what might have been, especially when you're idle or regretful. But what they don't explain is the feeling, the strange intimacy of a life not lived that still belongs to you. How is it that something entirely fictional can ache like truth? It's not fantasy. It's not delusion. It's a glitch, a tender one, a side effect of how consciousness maps time, potential, and identity. Your mind, in trying to make sense of your path, draws invisible threads to roads not taken, and then, paradoxically, it mourns them, loves them, even learns from them. You could argue that these echoes are just noise, but then again, so are songs, so are whispers, so are memories. A barista hands you a coffee and says with a wink, "Back again?" You always come by right after something important. You smile, though you're not sure what you missed. Even our routines sometimes seem shaped by what didn't happen. The street you avoid, the name you hesitate to say, the message you never sent, but still compose in your head at random moments. They live with us, silently, like unread letters in a locked drawer you never open, but never throw away either. And maybe that's the glitch. Not just that the past loops, but that the unwritten past does too. Let your breath soften now. You don't have to chase the unlived. They were never truly lost because they never truly were. They are the background hum of all that could have been. And strangely, sometimes they're the reason we act, speak, or pause, like a wind that shifts your direction without ever touching your skin. As we drift forward, carry this quiet paradox with you. The presence of absence, the vividness of what never came, and let it fade now as we step into the next glitch, one where presence itself is always just slightly too late. The now that's always missing. Have you ever tried to catch the present moment, like truly grasp it in your hands, only to realize that, by the time you notice it, it has already slipped away? It's like trying to cup water with open fingers. The more tightly you attempt to hold on to now, the quicker it escapes, leaving behind only the echo of what just was. There's something almost cruel about it, this delay built into our experience of life. According to neuroscience, our conscious awareness lags behind reality by about half a second. That might not sound like much, but it means every word you hear, every breath you take, every glance you exchange has already happened by the time your mind registers it. You are not where you think you are. You are half a second behind, late for your own life. So wait, someone might ask in a late-night conversation over tea. If I laugh at a joke, is my laugh already an echo of something that's over? Kind of. The other replies gently, smiling. You're not laughing in the moment. You're laughing at the ghost of the moment. That changes things, doesn't it? You're not living in the now. You're living in the residue of the now. You are a spectator watching the movie of your life, but the reel is already spinning a few frames ahead, always unreachable. So what does it mean to be present if presence is always just a memory? Does it mean we're forever chasing something we'll never catch? Or does it mean that presence isn't about grabbing onto time, but letting go of it completely? When people say, live in the moment, perhaps they're whispering to a version of you that doesn't technically exist. Not yet. Not here. It's strange, isn't it? This quiet glitch of consciousness that makes reality feel like a memory, even as it unfolds. Like waking from a dream you swear you just had, but the details are already fading. You try to hold on. You reach out mentally to touch the now, but it's already the then. Still, in this strange delay, there is a strange beauty too. Because if we are always living a little behind, maybe that's why music moves us, why memories feel holy, why watching a sunset is never really about the light, but the trace it leaves inside you. And maybe, just maybe, that delay is a gift, a buffer, a gentle cushion between what is and what was, a soft place for your soul to land in the stream of time. As you settle into this thought, let it cradle you. You don't have to be right on time. You don't have to catch the moment. Let it pass. Let it pass and hum through you like a melody already played. Now, breathe. The next glitch awaits, where time forgets to run forward and stumbles over itself instead. The future. You already remember. There are moments, quiet, passing ones, when you feel like you've been here before. Not because you remember the past, but because the future somehow echoes in your chest. A face you haven't met yet seems familiar. A place you've never visited feels lived in. and the words you're about to say already taste like memory on your tongue. "Hey," someone says softly next to you, their voice barely above a whisper. "Have we talked about this before?" You pause, not sure how to answer, because it does feel like a rerun. But of what and when? Science has a name for this: déjà rêvé, already dreamed. It's like your brain has flipped ahead in the storybook and glimpsed a paragraph before you were supposed to. And now, as you reach it again, it feels less like discovery and more like remembering. A ghost of a moment that hasn't happened yet, brushing past your shoulder like a breeze through an open window. Some call it intuition, a flash of insight from the subconscious. Others blame it on coincidence or false memory. But none of those labels explain the quiet certainty that sometimes settles in your chest, the unshakable sense that you've seen this sunset, felt this silence, heard that exact laugh, long before it ever touched your skin. The question isn't just, why does this happen? It's deeper. How does the mind know something it hasn't lived yet? Does consciousness exist in a single thread? Or is it more like a web, stretching across time, pulling sensations from both ends of the timeline? There's a theory tucked inside neuroscience, a whisper, not a headline, that the brain is less a recorder and more a simulator. It doesn't just replay, it predicts. And when a prediction lines up perfectly with the actual moment, it doesn't feel like logic. It feels like magic, like a prophecy delivered softly, wrapped in the veil of a passing second. Two people sit on a train. One turns to the other, mid-conversation. "I swear, I knew you were going to say that." The other smiles. "Maybe you did. Or maybe I've just always lived in your thoughts." It's hard to say where imagination ends and foreknowledge begins. The mind is a restless traveler. It leaps forward, sketches what might be, and sometimes forgets to label it as fiction. So when the real thing finally happens, it feels like homecoming. But what does that mean for our understanding of time? Is it truly linear, one foot in front of the other? Or are we walking on a spiral staircase, circling the same view again and again from slightly different heights? You might feel silly mentioning it aloud. That eerie sense you've been here before, that a dream whispered this streetlight, this exact scent, this fragment of dialogue. But perhaps you're not alone. Perhaps memory doesn't always wait for the moment to happen. Perhaps some part of you always knew. Now, let that thought rest. Let it melt, like a snowflake on warm skin. You don't need to explain it. Just breathe. The timeline bends here, not backward or forward, but sideways. And as your awareness softens, the next whisper rises, not from what is coming, but from what has always been. The sound that thinks you. It begins not with a sentence, but with a murmur, a soft hum beneath your thoughts, like a string plucked in a dark room. You don't form the words, they arrive, already shaped, already alive. Language, in its purest form, is not ink on paper or symbols in space. It's vibration, a ripple in silence. It reaches you before meaning catches up. Now close your eyes and recall this moment. You were just about to fall asleep when suddenly a sentence echoed inside your mind. You didn't speak it. You didn't even ask for it. Yet it was there, as real as your heartbeat. Where did it come from? Who whispered it? Do you ever feel like your mind has its own voice? Someone once asked as they lay beneath a ceiling fan, its soft rhythm spinning like a lullaby. "All the time," the other replied. "Sometimes I can't tell if I'm thinking or just listening to myself." That is the glitch. You don't think before you hear then call it thought. It's subtle, like mist pretending to be breath. Language is vibration shaped into logic, yes, but it begins as sound, not structure. The mind receives the vibration and rushes to claim ownership. But you were not the architect, only the echo chamber. Scientists might call this subvocalization, a neurological trace of imagined speech. Poets might call it the soul speaking softly to itself. And philosophers, they might say, if you're not the one speaking, and you're not the one listening, then who are you in the moment thought arrives? And that's where it deepens. Because if thought is internal sound, could silence be the most authentic voice of all? A silence so whole, it doesn't need a sentence to prove it's there. In that space between your inner narration, when all becomes still, there's no convincing, no arguing, no explaining. Just presence, just awareness. A still pond before the ripple. Have you ever noticed how the most profound moments in life are often wordless? The glance between two people who understand. The awe when you see the ocean for the first time. The breath after grief. No sentence can contain those moments, and maybe they don't need to. A soft rain taps the window. One of the voices returns. Why do you think we talk to ourselves? Maybe because we're afraid of what we'd find in the quiet, comes the answer, almost too faint to catch. But perhaps that quiet is not emptiness. It's home, a space untouched by explanation, a resting place beneath the noise. You don't have to fear it. You can listen. Not for the next thought, but for the absence of one. And in that absence, feel yourself dissolve into something both smaller and greater than a voice, into awareness, without narration. Let the echo fade. The next idea is already waiting, not in your ears, not in your head, but somewhere deeper, humming just below the threshold of hearing. The feeling that wasn't yours. There are moments, quiet ones, when a sadness drifts in like a cloud through an open window. You didn't summon it. There was no argument, no memory, no reason, and yet it sits with you. Heavy, familiar, like a coat you didn't put on, but now find yourself wearing. Two friends sit across from each other in a cafe. One stirs their drink without speaking. The other asks gently, "Rough day?" The first shakes their head. "No, I was fine before I got here." And yet, something has settled between them. Not words, not thoughts, but a shared weight, unspoken. This is the glitch. You can feel what isn't yours. Modern neuroscience speaks of mirror neurons, those tiny echoes in your brain that reflect someone else's state as if it were your own. When someone near you clenches their jaw, your body subtly echoes the tension. When they weep, your throat tightens. Their pain hums through your nervous system like music through shared walls. But it doesn't stop at the visible. A passing stranger frowns, and your mood dips. A bus full of silent, anxious people, and you feel uneasy before you've even found your seat. It's called emotional contagion, and like a breeze, it needs no invitation. You breathe it in without knowing. Now consider this. If emotions can drift from one person to another, like the scent of smoke on clothing, how many of your feelings were never born in you at all? A woman walks home after work, a little more irritable than usual. Nothing went wrong. The day was quiet, but the subway was crowded. The man beside her was anxious, tapping his foot in bursts. The air was thick with stress she didn't notice until it followed her into her apartment. She thinks, "Why am I so on edge?" And that's the trick. The brain tries to make up reasons. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm upset about something I forgot. But what if there is no why? What if the emotion arrived uninvited and left without explanation? The brain hates blanks. It fills them with stories. That sadness? Maybe it wasn't about your past. That anxiety? Maybe it wasn't about your deadline. Maybe it was simply borrowed. We like to think of feelings as truth, that what we feel is a reflection of who we are. But if emotions can jump from one body to another, like static clinging to sleeves, then your inner world might be less private than you think. It doesn't make the feeling less real, but it does make it less yours. And that's okay. Because emotions, like weather, pass. They swirl, gather, and dissolve. Not every storm means the sky is broken. So next time something weighs on your chest without name or reason, pause. Don't rush to fix it. Let it be a visitor. Offer it tea. Watch how it moves. Sometimes that's all a feeling needs, to be seen and not claimed. As one person once told another while brushing crumbs off a park bench, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just in the air today. And somehow, that made them both smile. Let your breath soften now. The next glitch is even more delicate. It lies hidden in the space between naming and knowing, where feelings fade before words can hold them, where sensation arrives long before identity. Let's drift there, together. The wordless knowing. There are moments when truth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive dressed in sentences or wrapped in definitions. It doesn't knock. It just is. A presence, soft and unspoken, like a scent on the air that you recognize but can't quite name. You don't think it, you feel it. You know those moments when someone walks into the room and you don't need to turn around. You already know who it is. Or when a decision settles into your bones before your mind even tries to weigh the options. That's the kind of knowing we're talking about. Not logic, not deduction, but a quiet alignment between your being and reality. A resonance. I don't know how I knew, she whispered. I just knew. He looked at her, puzzled but not doubting. Like when you hear a song you've never heard before, but somehow it already feels like home? She nodded. Exactly like that. There's a space beneath language where understanding blooms. It isn't taught. It can't be articulated. It's the calm certainty of a baby recognizing its mother's heartbeat, long before it has a word for love, or the stillness that fills your chest when you're alone under the stars, and something in you says, without a word, you belong here. Science measures the world in signals and symbols. Philosophy tests the boundaries of reason. But there's a glitch right at the edge of those systems, where something ancient speaks without sound. This knowing doesn't depend on reason. In fact, when you try to explain it, it shrinks, like mist under a microscope. The more you chase it with language, the faster it dissolves. So the question arises, can you trust what you can't describe? Standing before a great work of art, a painting, a sunset, a silence between two people who understand each other without speaking. You don't say, I comprehend this through measurable data. You just stand there and feel the truth of it. Not a truth that can be proven, but one that needs no proof. Children live in that space. Before language boxes the world into names and categories, they experience directly. They don't think, this is beauty. They simply are in the beauty. And we, the grown-ups, often forget that kind of knowing exists. We've been trained to doubt what can't be explained, to dismiss the intuitive, to mistrust the mystical. And yet, it remains. Like a heartbeat beneath the noise. Maybe you've felt it too. When you walked away from someone and something inside screamed, stay, even when every reason said go. Or when you looked at a stranger and somehow sensed they were about to become part of your story. Those moments are not accidents. They are invitations, reminders that not everything real fits into words. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the shape of what you can't say. That, right there, that pause, is where truth lives. It doesn't shout, it hums. A knowing without a sentence, a certainty without a script. Let the need for words melt away. The next glitch waits just beyond the reach of language, where logic dissolves and intuition begins to speak. The glitch of repetition. That isn't. Some moments arrive wearing the clothes of déjà vu, familiar but slightly altered, like a song you swear you've heard before, but the melody drifts off in a different direction just as you hum along. Not quite a copy, not quite new, just enough sameness to stir something unspoken. You turn the corner and see the same elderly man from last week's walk. Same coat, same pace. But this time, he hums. And you wonder, have I stepped into a loop? Or am I simply noticing the rhythm life offers when you slow down? The mind, after all, is a pattern hunter. It doesn't tolerate randomness well. It stitches meaning into the seams of the day, desperate to decode the mess of living. So when you hear a phrase twice, when a gesture repeats, when an old feeling resurfaces on a Tuesday morning, it doesn't just notice, it whispers, "This means something." One evening at a laundromat, someone quietly says, "Didn't we meet before?" You look up, unsure. They're half smiling, folding a red sweater. Maybe it's a pickup line, maybe not. But you laugh, and for a moment, the air feels rehearsed. Not in a fake way, more like the scene had waited somewhere in the back of your memory for its cue. Sometimes we call this a glitch, as if repetition is a mistake. But maybe, just maybe, it's resonance, a part of your inner world vibrating against the outer one, not repeating, but echoing. Repetition without duplication. Have you noticed how the same arguments happen in relationships, but the tone shifts slightly each time? Like something deeper trying to surface through familiar words. Or the way the same mistake feels different on the third or fourth go. Not because it's changed, but because you have. Growth, it seems, doesn't always knock. Sometimes it circles. And what if that sense of looping isn't a trap, but a teacher? What if it's not that you're stuck, but that something inside you is repeating because it's still asking to be seen? A friend once told me, "I keep choosing people who leave, and every time I tell myself it's coincidence." Her voice trembled. But now, I wonder if I've mistaken a wound for a pattern. There's a difference between being trapped and being tuned. One isolates, the other awakens. This is the quiet genius of your subconscious. It speaks through repetition not to bore you, but to call your attention, to point toward the unresolved, to hum the same emotional chord until you finally listen to the harmony underneath. So if today feels like yesterday and the week feels like a rerun, pause, look again, listen with the part of you that remembers not events, but emotions. Ask yourself gently, what is this moment rhyming with? Not every pattern is a prison. Some are invitations to notice what you've ignored. And just before you drift off, if a familiar thought rises again like mist on the same stretch of dream, know that you're not broken. You're just resonating, feeling the beat of something unfinished. And that's okay. Let that echo fade into quiet. The next idea doesn't loop. It breathes. It moves forward, soft and alive, like a thought that never had to repeat itself to be understood. The place you miss but never knew. There is a longing that slips past language, a gentle ache that flutters beneath the ribs when all is still and night folds itself around your skin like a memory. It's not for a person, not for a street you grew up on, or a town you left behind. It's something stranger, softer, as though your heart remembers a place your feet have never touched. Have you ever missed something you can't name? Like, you're nostalgic for a place that might not even be real? Exactly. It's like the smell of rain on warm pavement, even though you've never lived anywhere it rained that way. Yeah, or like a hug you've never had, but your bones know it. There's a kind of homesickness that isn't for home. It's not about bricks, rooftops, or the scent of your mother's cooking. It's a homesickness for a feeling, for a way of existing that once whispered to your nervous system as if it had been carved into you long before your first breath. Some call it saudade, the untranslatable longing for something lost beyond recovery. Others describe it as the shadow of a past life, a flicker from a dream that never truly ended. And still others, in quiet moments, admit it feels like missing a part of yourself that hasn't even arrived yet. It's the quiet pause when you walk into a field and feel you've been there before. The stillness of an old song that moves you to tears, even when you don't understand the lyrics. Or the strange pull of a stranger's eyes, like they remember a secret you forgot. Maybe you're not just missing something that was. Maybe you're grieving something that could have been, or something that still might be. A future version of you waving from the fog, calling gently back in time. There's a theory whispered in philosophy that the soul remembers, not as a collection of memories, but as an orientation, like a compass needle always aching toward true north. Perhaps the places we miss but never knew are the coordinates our consciousness still dreams toward. Do you think it's possible to miss the person you're becoming? Maybe that's the strangest part, missing a self that hasn't arrived yet, but you feel the absence anyway. Like waking up with a hole in your chest, but not knowing what was ever there, or what will be. Let that longing soften you. It's not a flaw, it's a signal, a quiet ripple that there is more to you than your memories, that your consciousness doesn't just remember backwards, it reaches forward too. So tonight, rest in that ache, not to fix it, but to feel it, to listen. There's meaning in missing, beauty in the gaps. The next glitch waits there, in the stretch between who you were and who you might yet be. And perhaps, in that in-between, something timeless hums your name. The body that remembers without you. It starts with a quiet ache you can't explain. Not a sharp pain, not even discomfort. Just a whisper in the shoulder blades, a soft clenching in your jaw, a tightening of the breath at the very moment you think you're relaxed. You're lying still. The day has ended. But something underneath you hasn't. There are memories that don't speak in words. They curl into your spine. They hum behind your ribcage. You may not remember the moment, what was said, what was done, but your body does. A flinch when a certain name is said. A pause before turning the doorknob. Muscles that contract at the echo of a feeling you've buried so well. Even your conscious mind believes it's gone. But the body has no such illusions. It keeps the score. I don't know why I reacted like that, she says, pulling her hand away from the railing at the cafe's second floor. He smiles gently, not prying. Maybe your body remembers something you forgot. She nods slowly, unsure whether to be comforted or unnerved. Trauma doesn't always arrive as drama. Sometimes it enters the body like a draft through an unseen crack. subtle, constant, and it stays. Stored in the way you cross your arms, in the breath you hold too long, in the eyes that look away just a second too early. And then there's love. That too has muscle memory. The way your hands remember how to hold a certain face. The way your legs used to walk a familiar path home. The way your chest softened, without command, just from a voice you no longer hear. We speak of forgetting, as if it's final, but your body is a quiet archivist. It has kept notes while your mind slept. When you said, "I'm fine," it recorded the lie in the curve of your back. When you smiled to keep the peace, your hips remembered the tension. Every uncried tear leaves a trace somewhere, even if only in the breath you don't realize you hold before speaking. Do you ever feel something sharp but soft in the middle of your chest when you're not even sad? He asks. Like grief without a name, she replies. Yes. That's the body's way of whispering back. So then, who is really in charge? If your body carries the truth your mind refuses to name, can you trust it more than memory? Could healing begin not from remembering, but from listening? Could you simply sit with a twitch, a breath, a posture, and say, "I hear you"? You don't need to recall every detail to begin again. You only need to feel what was left behind. The nervous laugh, the habit of standing near the exit, the way your hands tremble when asked about your childhood, even when you say, "Nothing really happened." Let the body speak. It will not shout, but it will hum until you tune in. Breathe now, not shallow and rushed, but deep into the bones, the places that never lied. Let that breath stretch your spine. Let it soften the jaw, unlock the fists you didn't realize you made. The next idea waits, where habit and healing collide, where movement remembers what memory cannot, where unconscious rhythm becomes the compass back to yourself. Walking without knowing why. Sometimes you get up and start walking, not because you've decided anything, but because something in you has already begun. Before your mind catches up with a reason, your body is already in motion. You're halfway across the room, or down a familiar street, or drifting through the rhythm of a routine, and only then does the mind whisper its explanation. I was going to grab coffee, or I needed some air. But if you look closely, if you truly slow down, you'll notice that the decision wasn't yours in the way you think it was. It arose, like a breeze nudging a leaf from a branch, gentle, untraceable, yet undeniable. Do you ever just start walking and then realize you don't even know where you're going? She asked him one quiet evening. He looked at her, eyebrows raised with a tired sort of recognition. All the time, he said. Usually ends with me standing in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like I expected to explain my life. They both laughed softly. But it wasn't just about the fridge. It was about the mystery of motion, about how life seems to move us before we think we've made a choice. You reach for your phone before you realize you're lonely. You turn down a street you didn't intend to, and later call it intuition. You sit down beside someone, and only years later realize that moment began a new chapter. There's something humbling in this, something unsettling too. We like to believe we are the pilots of our lives, hands firmly on the controls, eyes fixed on the path. But what if the path pulls us? What if, more often than not, the body acts and the mind follows, crafting stories to justify the movement after the fact? Neuroscience offers clues. Some studies show that signals to initiate movement fire in the brain milliseconds before we consciously decide. That tiny delay, the mind's lag, is enough to question the foundation of free will. If your legs moved before your thoughts caught up? Who was driving? The illusion of choice is seductive, but this glitch, this quiet rebellion of the body, suggests that perhaps awareness is not a command center, it's a storyteller, a soft voice trying to make sense of something already set in motion. I wonder, she said after a pause, if we're all just walking dreams, not fully awake, not fully asleep. He nodded. Maybe that's why we get tired without knowing why. We walk all day, not through cities or hallways, but through decisions already made, pretending they were ours. They sat in that thought for a moment, letting it breathe. It's not hopeless. This realization doesn't remove meaning. It adds texture. It paints each step with mystery. When you feel pulled to move, it's worth asking not just where you're going, but who is moving you. And when you pause, it's not a failure to decide. It's a rare moment of noticing, of becoming aware that perhaps life is lived more in the in-between than in the grand decisions. So the next time your feet carry you somewhere before your thoughts arrive, let yourself wonder, is this instinct? Is it memory? Is it something older than language, buried in the marrow of movement itself? Let your feet rest now. Feel the stillness. The next glitch, whispering just out of reach, lives in that fragile space between what you want and what moves you before you know you want it. The thought that isn't yours anymore. It starts quietly. You don't summon it. You don't agree to it. And yet, there it is. A thought you'd never say out loud. One that doesn't match who you believe yourself to be. It flickers across the mind like a shadow slipping behind a curtain. You catch it just long enough to feel the shame, then pretend you never saw it. But here's something you rarely hear. You didn't choose it. The thought chose you, and not because you're broken or unworthy. Thoughts are weather systems, not verdicts. They gather, storm, and pass through, some gently like spring drizzle, others like thunder you didn't prepare for. The mind doesn't ask permission. It just opens the window and something flies in. Have you ever had a thought that made you wince? All the time. Sometimes I wonder if it even came from me. What do you do with it? I treat it like a weird cloud. I don't build a house under it. I just wait for it to move. Some thoughts stick longer than others. They wrap around your inner world like ivy, not because they belong there, but because you held on. You fed them, believed they meant something about you. But they're not your handwriting. You're just the paper. In a quiet room, you remember a moment from years ago. Something awkward, a sentence you regret. Suddenly, it plays again in your head like a broken tape. It doesn't even matter anymore, but the mind replays it anyway, like a musician tapping the same wrong note. And that's where the tenderness begins, in realizing that thought is not identity, that mental content does not equal character. You are not the voice. You are the space where the voice echoes. If you didn't plant it, if you didn't water it, then maybe it was never yours to claim or blame. Still, it speaks, and when it does, you respond in small, humane ways. You turn the channel gently. You breathe slowly. You whisper back, "Thanks, but I don't need you tonight." Not rejection, just non-participation. A woman once stood in line at a cafe, holding a coffee she hadn't finished. A man brushed past and muttered something rude. Her mind fired off 5 angry replies, sharp, perfect comebacks. But none left her lips. She blinked, let them rise, let them dissolve. Because maybe mastery is not silence. Maybe it's softness in response to noise. There's nothing wrong with having a storm inside you. There's only harm in building a house there. As you lie here, listening, maybe thoughts still visit. That's okay. They will. But you don't have to answer the door. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky they pass through. Let the clouds drift. Let the tension in your chest soften. Let the breath do what it does best. Return you to now. The next glitch waits in a quieter place. Not in the thought, but in the mystery of why it appears at all. The dream that changed you more than reality. There are moments when the body wakes, but the soul stays behind. You open your eyes not to the familiar softness of morning, but to the sharp ache of something lost, something that only existed in the space behind your eyelids. A dream, not just imagery and sensation, but a full immersion, as if you lived another life entirely. And now, that life is over. Have you ever woken up and felt like something inside you was different? She asks as they sit side by side, staring at their coffee without sipping it. He nods slowly, watching steam rise like memory. Yeah. One time I had a dream I had a daughter. We played by the ocean. I remember her laugh clearer than most real moments. She looks at him gently. But you don't have a daughter. I know, he whispers, but I miss her like I do. Dreams don't ask permission. They seep in like water through the cracks of your psyche. You wake up with a lump in your throat or laughter caught between ribs. Sometimes you swear the smell of something from the dream lingers. Sandalwood, sea salt, the perfume of someone you never met but somehow loved. Science might say it's just neural cleanup, emotional detritus shuffled and reshaped by the sleeping brain. But that explanation feels hollow when you wake up grieving a fictional friend, when your chest tightens for a city you've never visited, or your heart bursts with a love story that bloomed and withered while the moon stood watch. What do you call an illusion that changes you more than anything real? Sometimes, those dreams carve new paths in the brain, altering how you respond to the world. You wake with fresh patience, or strange sadness, or the sudden clarity that you've been lying to yourself. These aren't just dreams. They are silent teachers, mysterious therapists. They whisper what your conscious mind is too distracted or afraid to say out loud. And yet, when you try to tell someone, the magic slips through your fingers like fog. I had a dream, but I can't explain it. You search for the right words, but they vanish, like the dream itself, dissolving faster the more tightly you grip. Still, the change remains. Like a door was opened in your sleep, and now the hallway beyond it glows, even if you can't step through again. I still remember her voice, he says, eyes unfocused. From the dream? Yeah, she told me. You don't have much time. Then she hugged me, and I woke up crying. She places her hand over his. Maybe that was a version of you, telling yourself something you needed to hear. If the psyche has its own ecosystem, then dreams are its weather. They shape landscapes, rearrange rivers, cause silent storms that leave behind entirely new terrain. You can wake up and everything looks the same walls, same ceiling, but you are altered, and no one can see it but you. So what then is reality? Is it what lasts longer, or what leaves the deeper mark? Does it matter if the life you lived in a dream only took 5 minutes? If it echoes in your bones like something sacred? You might forget the dream's content, but not its effect. That subtle shift in direction, like a compass nudged while you slept. As you breathe now, allow yourself to recall a dream that felt like truth. Let it float just beneath waking thought, not needing explanation. Let it be felt. Then gently, let it dissolve. Because the next idea waits, quietly, where illusion becomes architecture, where the imagined builds the foundations of the self. And even if you forget the dream's plot, you will not forget the way it changed you. The memory you didn't live. You pause in a hallway that feels eerily familiar. The worn-out carpet, the painting on the far wall. You're certain you've been here before. But when you ask someone, anyone, they gently laugh and say, "No, this is your first time." Yet your body holds the certainty like an echo, tender and stubborn. The sensation lingers, like an aftertaste of a meal you're sure you once had, but you can't say where or when. It's as though the moment belongs to someone else, or to another version of you, one who walked a slightly different timeline, one whose memories bled into yours through a thin veil of dream or déjà vu. A soft voice in the distance. "Wait, didn't we meet here once before?" The other person hesitates, smiles politely. "No, I would have remembered you." But you do remember. A moment with golden light filtering through windows, laughter hanging in the air like suspended dust. A feeling so vivid you can nearly trace its contours with your breath. False memories. Psychology labels them glitches of the mind, the hippocampus filling in blank spaces with educated guesses. Our brains are storytellers, not archivists. They stitch together meaning, often at the cost of precision, and most of the time, you never notice. But some of these stitched moments feel too real to be fake. They carry weight, texture, emotional temperature. They sway your decisions, shape your regrets, even shift your sense of who you are. A woman once swore she remembered her mother singing a lullaby, though she later found out her mother had been deaf since birth. A man recalled hiding under a bridge as a child, though his hometown had no rivers. These aren't lies. They're emotional truths disguised as facts. So if your identity rests on the scaffolding of memory, and some of those beams are illusions, what exactly are you made of? You are a house built on fog, a garden grown from seeds of both truth and fiction. Does that make you less you, or more beautifully fragile? A boy, in conversation with a teacher, asks, "What if my happiest childhood memory isn't real?" The teacher replies gently, "Then your heart made it real enough to survive on." And isn't that, in itself, a kind of truth? A truth softer than logic. A truth that lives not in facts, but in how your chest tightens, your eyes sting, your silence deepens. Some say we are the sum of our stories. But what if the stories are wrong, and still right in how they moved us? You don't need to sort them anymore. Don't need to chase down what was real and what wasn't. The point isn't to solve the memory, it's to feel what it gave you. Let that question rest now. It doesn't need an answer to matter. The room grows quieter, and somewhere just beyond sleep, the next glitch hums, quietly flickering in the blank spaces where forgotten truths wait patiently to be felt, not found. The knowing that comes too late. It always feels like a betrayal when clarity arrives only after the smoke has settled. You replay the moments like a film reel that forgot to warn you in time. The look in their eyes, the hesitation in the tone, the way the silence lingered too long between words. And now, suddenly, it all makes sense after everything has already burned. That's the glitch. Not that you missed the signs, but that the signs only reveal themselves once you've walked through the fire. There's a peculiar ache in hindsight. It parades as wisdom, but often wears the mask of regret. You think you should have known better. You feel like a fool for trusting, for hoping, for loving without the armor. But the truth is, you only see the red flags clearly after they've been painted in the ash of consequence. What we call insight might just be a desperate narrative, stitched together from the wreckage to make meaning of what hurt us. Two voices stir softly in the quiet afterward. "You saw it too late," one whispers. "I wasn't ready to see it then," replies the other. That's the thing about being human. We learn backwards. We live forward, blindly, with open hands and uncertain hearts. But the mind turns everything into a lesson, into a pattern, into a warning for a future that may never echo the past. We become haunted by what we should have noticed, by the words we didn't say, by the exits we didn't take. And still, in that haunting, a deeper truth hides. You were not the person then that you are now. The version of you who missed the signs was still learning how to see. They didn't fail. They simply hadn't yet become. When walking through a dim hallway with no lights, you stumble, you bruise your shin. Later, when someone turns on the light, you see the obstacle and think, "How could I have missed that?" But the darkness wasn't your fault, and neither was the belief that the room was safe. We forget that we're not all knowing in the moment. We forget how much faith it takes to trust without proof, to love without certainty. And when things fall apart, we rewrite the past as if clarity was always an option we ignored. Forgiveness is not about excusing what hurt us. It's about releasing the grip of expectation on who we once were. Can you forgive the you who didn't yet understand? The one who tried, who hoped, who risked tenderness even when the world didn't feel safe? Let that forgiveness seep in like warm water. Let it soften the tight places where judgment hides. Let it remind you, the fire was never your fault. You saw what you could, with the eyes you had. As you rest now, know that you don't have to keep replaying the story just to justify the pain. The next moment comes not to explain, but to soothe. A glitch born not in memory, but in silence, where the self is allowed to simply be, without being perfect, without needing to know everything too soon. Just breathing, just resting, just enough. The word that changed the world inside you. It didn't scream. It didn't echo across valleys or thunder across a sky. It arrived quietly, almost politely, a few syllables stitched together. But when they reached you, they opened something that would never close again. Sometimes it's just a word, a sentence, a breath of language so small it wouldn't stir a leaf. And yet, your chest tightens, your knees soften. Your mind doesn't quite understand, but your body already knows. The shift has begun. There's a kind of magic we rarely name, the sorcery of sound. You hear, "I'm sorry, but," or "it's not you," or "Nang, you're hired," and the world tilts. A future unravels or a dream fastens itself to your ribs. In one moment, you're someone else, not by will, but by reaction. You didn't think your way into this feeling. You were carried there, by language, by air turned electric. Two people sit on a quiet train platform, shoulders almost touching. One leans in and whispers, "That's the thing I never told anyone." There's no thunder, no applause, just that. And still, it changes everything. Because now, a world that was closed is open. A truth buried is shared. And the person beside you becomes a mirror that suddenly reflects more than light. You don't remember every word you've heard in your life, but you remember that one, the one that cracked your silence, or planted hope, or ended safety. Maybe it was someone walking away. Maybe someone saying you mattered, Maybe it was a voice on a voicemail you'll never delete. The content may fade. The feeling doesn't. Is that why we tread so carefully or so carelessly with what we say? Is it why silence sometimes feels safer than the risk of letting sound slip out? Because deep down, we know. Words don't just explain a thought. They build or break entire worlds. Sometimes the sentence that changed you was only meant as background noise, but your soul caught it like prophecy. I didn't know it meant that much, they might say, and you nod, even though part of you wants to reply. It meant everything. If our sense of self can be dismantled or rebuilt by a phrase, what does that say about who we are? Is there such thing as a stable identity? Or are we just a series of dominoes, waiting for the right word to fall? But here's the quiet comfort. If one word could break you, another might restore you. If one sentence could turn the lights off, maybe the next one turns them back on. At the edge of a hospital bed, a nurse leans in. Her voice is calm, almost rehearsed. It's going to be okay. Does she believe it? Maybe not. But for that moment, the sentence is enough. The body lets go. A hand unclenches. The breath comes easier. Reality hasn't changed, but your ability to survive it has. And in a coffee shop on an ordinary Tuesday, someone looks up from their phone and says, "I'm proud of you." There's no confetti, no music swell, just a pulse of meaning, delivered in quiet. Yet somehow, the heart rises. So maybe we're all carrying around a sentence, one we heard, one we can't unhear, one that shaped us when we didn't know we were being shaped. And maybe we're also carrying one we've yet to say, one that will bend someone else's world gently into a new shape. Let that possibility rest with you. You don't need to chase it. Let the syllables dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Because what comes next won't need words at all. It waits not in language, but in silence, in the pause between thought and meaning, in the sacred stillness before the next breath arrives. The question that asks you back. There are questions that live quietly in the back of your mind, waiting not for an answer, but for your stillness. You don't so much answer them as fall into them. Questions like, "Who are you?" or "Why are you here?" don't behave like riddles with fixed solutions. They hover like candlelight in a darkened room, flickering not to reveal a truth, but to show you the outline of your own shadow. In late at night, the hum of traffic in the distance, a lamp buzzing gently. You turn to them and ask softly, "Do you ever wonder who you'd be if fear never touched your choices?" There's a pause. They don't respond. Instead, their eyes shift, not toward you, but inward, as if the question wasn't something to be answered, but something that turned its gaze back onto them. That's when you realize the question was never yours. It was theirs, and it had always been watching. That's the nature of these strange mirrors, questions that feel more like portals. You step close, expecting reflection, but instead, the glass moves. It breathes. It sees you. And sometimes, if you listen too deeply, it speaks back, not in words, but in unraveling. You begin to feel less certain of the stories you've told yourself. The narratives that once made you feel safe now seem like scaffolding, held together not by truth, but by the fear of letting go. A soft voice, real or imagined, might echo through this unraveling. Do you ever get tired of pretending to know who you are? You nod, almost reflexively, all the time. And they smile, not in judgment, but recognition. That's when the real answers begin, just after the pretending ends. These kinds of questions don't teach you in the way a teacher might. They don't provide explanations. They don't lead you to clarity. Instead, they gently pull apart the knots you didn't realize you were holding inside, the knots of identity, of expectation, of false certainty, and in their place, they leave something quieter, something softer, not knowledge, but presence. This is the strange gift of the question that asks you back. It's not a doorway to something you don't know. It's an invitation to release what you thought you did. In that release, something shifts, not forward, not upward, but inward, into a stillness where nothing needs to be answered at all. And it is in that stillness where the next idea waits, not to be chased, but to be felt, not as a thought, but as a quiet breath between thoughts, a place where the mind stops speaking and starts listening. The whisper of forgotten knowledge. Some truths don't arrive with fanfare. They don't knock. They don't flash or scream. They drift in, quiet as mist slipping through a half-open window. You don't even realize they're there until your breath stills, and something inside you leans forward to listen. Not your ears, not your mind, but something older, something that's been waiting. Have you ever heard a phrase, or a sentence, or even just a glance between strangers that felt like it had been whispered to you before? You can't trace the source. It's not a memory. Not quite. But your body reacts like it recognizes the meaning, like the truth of it doesn't need to be taught. It only needs to be remembered. There are moments in life, subtle, brief, where we don't learn something new, but awaken to something ancient. A feeling that doesn't explain itself, but settles into you like a song you've always known. It doesn't fill your mind, it fills your bones. Two people sit across from each other in a laundromat, the fluorescent lights flickering. One folds a faded blue shirt with practiced hands and says softly, "You ever feel like you used to know things before all this?" The other doesn't look up, like we were fluent in a language we forgot before we learned to speak. That's how it begins, the remembering, a flicker, not a flash. You might feel it when you reread an old book and discover a line underlined, though you have no memory of ever holding a pen, or when a scent triggers an emotion that doesn't belong to any event in your timeline, but still pulls tears from your eyes. It's the soul's way of saying, "I've been here before." This isn't just poetry. Cognitive science has long questioned how the brain stores unused knowledge. Some theories even suggest memory may reach beyond lived experience into ancestral or even archetypal imprints, like you're living echoes of wisdom you never personally acquired. That ache of familiarity might be an echo from a different layer of you. And if that's true, if wisdom is remembered rather than learned, then what does it mean to forget? Maybe forgetting isn't a flaw. Maybe it's the veil we wear to play this game of being human. Perhaps we agreed to start again, to lose the map so we could rediscover the terrain. Maybe we knew that remembering too early would ruin the story. Still, when the veil lifts just slightly, you might feel it. Not like lightning, more like a feather brushing against the inside of your chest, a name on the tip of your spirit, a truth that was never taught, yet feels like yours. And it doesn't need to make sense. That's the gift. These moments weren't designed for logic. They're here to be felt, to pull you deeper into the mystery that pulses beneath thought. And in that soft unraveling, something inside you stretches, yawns, and rests. A child once asked her grandfather, "How did you know the right answer without thinking?" He smiled, brushing dust off an old book. "I didn't think. he said. I remembered. She blinked, unsure what he meant, but somewhere inside, the words settled, quietly, like a seed in soil. Let that forgotten truth settle within you too, not as a task, not as a riddle, just a presence, gentle and patient. It does not need to be solved. It only asks to be held. And now, as your breath begins to slow, we drift towards something even stranger, a place where time doesn't move forward like a clock, where it folds and breathes within you. The next glitch opens there, where your inner time, not the world's, tells the story. Let go now. The remembering has done its part. The clock, hidden inside you. Sometimes, before you glance at the clock, you already know. Not the exact number, but the sensation. A nudge in your body. A subtle knowing that says it's late, or just past noon, or too early to rise. This awareness, gentle, instinctual, doesn't come from a wristwatch or a phone screen. It emerges from somewhere much deeper. Something older than time zones. Something that ticks not on a wall, but inside your skin. Inside you lives a clock without hands. It's in your breath as it slows when night draws in. It's in your hunger that sharpens just before a meal. It's in the tiny pull behind your eyes when it's time to sleep. Your body doesn't need permission from a calendar to move through its days. It hums to its own rhythm, circadian, hormonal, emotional. It's not just a system, it's a song, and every cell in you knows the melody, even if your mind forgets the lyrics. I feel like it's around 5, someone says, looking up at the dusky light. How do you know? Their friend asks. The answer is a shrug and a smile. I just feel it. There are patterns pulsing through you, some biological, some mysterious. What science names as cortisol spikes or melatonin shifts, ancient traditions called energy flows or spirit winds. But language aside, the experience remains. Your body doesn't follow time. It embodies it. You are time, in a form that breathes. Have you ever noticed how longing arrives on schedule? As if memories have their own appointment book, a wave of missing someone, always hitting you around the same hour, or how grief can resurface every year without checking a date. Your emotions are part of this internal clock too. They rise and fall in synchrony with moments you didn't even mark. It's as if your body remembers things you never consciously noted, as if time itself is imprinted in your muscles, your lungs, your blood. Now comes the deeper question. If your body remembers the past without effort, might it also anticipate the future in ways your mind cannot yet grasp? Have you ever had a feeling, unshakable and soft, that something is about to shift? A turning point, a meeting, a goodbye. Not superstition, but sensation. What if those moments aren't prediction, but alignment? A rhythm you've always been part of, now simply playing its next beat? Do you ever feel like your body knows something before you do? Someone asks quietly as they sit under a dimming sky. All the time, the other replies. It's like I move to music I can't hear. But somehow, I still dance. In this space of reflection, we might begin to wonder whether our obsession with calendars and clocks is just a way of mimicking what our bodies already know. Maybe the true timekeeper is not the ticking second hand, but the space between our breaths. The pause before a thought. The instinct that tells us to rest or reach out. So, let go, for a moment, of counting time. Let it count you. Your steps, your silences, your smallest choices. You're not a thing that moves through time. You are woven from it. Every heartbeat a second, every dream a season, every emotion a soft hourglass turning quietly inside your ribs. And now, as that rhythm slows, feel it, the breath deepening. the mind settling. The next idea drifts just ahead, where time forgets to move, and something eternal begins to whisper. Breathing without thinking. You didn't ask your lungs to fill just now. They simply did, as if the world itself whispered a rhythm through your ribs, and your body obeyed without hesitation. That's the quiet magic of breath. It arrives, stays briefly, then leaves, without waiting for your approval, like a tide that doesn't check in with the moon before rising. Somewhere between the inhale and the exhale, you live. But rarely do you notice the space in between, the pause, the gentle moment where nothing happens, yet everything rests. That silence is not empty. It holds the weight of your existence. There's a gentle conversation happening every second inside you, and you've never needed to speak. Your breath doesn't demand to be noticed. It just hopes to be honored. One evening, someone asked, "Don't you ever worry about forgetting to breathe?" And the other smiled, slow and knowing. "I think it remembers me better than I remember myself." That moment stayed with them, even as the night deepened and conversation faded into hums and sighs. And somewhere, beneath the noise of thoughts, they both listened to the steady hush of their bodies, doing the work of staying alive. Breathing is not a task. It is a reminder that not everything needs to be controlled, that some things, perhaps the most vital things, function better when left alone. Even as you sleep, your breath keeps its promise. It asks nothing. It gives everything. And maybe that's the deeper message. If your breath, your pulse, your being can operate in peace without constant direction, then what else inside you knows how to carry on? What emotions arise and pass like breath, unnoticed but transformative? What dreams grow in the dark, unwatered by logic but alive all the same? The heart beats on its own. Tears well before permission. Laughter escapes without rehearsal. All these sacred gestures flowing through you like breath. So why do we still feel the need to control every part of ourselves? Tonight, let yourself soften. Let the air enter and leave without your interference. You are not the conductor here. You are the instrument, and life is playing a song through you. Somewhere, a woman stands at a window long after midnight, her hand over her chest, feeling the simple rise and fall. She isn't counting breaths or chasing thoughts. She is just there, present without effort, breathing, as if that alone is enough. And for once, it is. There's a freedom hidden in that knowing, a grace and surrender. You don't have to understand everything your body does. You only need to trust that some part of you remembers how to stay alive. And in that trust, you might discover a deeper rhythm, one not measured in minutes, but in stillness, in surrender, in presence. Now let go of the reins. Let your breath become the lullaby. Let life exhale through you, and begin to wonder, not what you're doing to life, but what life is doing through you. Being lived through life. There's a quiet moment, just after you've finished brushing your teeth, or while tying your shoes, when something odd stirs inside you. A flicker, a pause, a whisper of doubt you quickly brush aside. Am I doing life, or is life doing me? You walk, you breathe, you blink. But how often do you command any of it? Your heart beats tirelessly, not because you ask it to. Tears come when they come, laughter too. Even your deepest feelings, love, sadness, longing, seem to swell and fade without your permission. You call it my body, my thoughts, my emotions. But if they all arise on their own, without your conscious instruction, then who is the you owning them? It's easy to believe we're in control, that we are the driver behind the eyes, the narrator of the story. But maybe, just maybe, that feeling is the story. Maybe consciousness is not a master, but a mirror. What if you are simply the awareness watching this strange theater unfold? A character convinced it's writing the script, not realizing the plot is already flowing through it. Two voices meet in the hush of a dim kitchen. One leans against the counter, staring into a mug of tea. "I feel like I'm failing at life," she whispers. Her friend, seated by the window, replies without looking up. "Maybe it's not something to win. Maybe life isn't something we do. Then what is it? A wave, and we're the shore." She laughs, dry and uncertain. "That sounds poetic. But if we're not steering, aren't we just drifting?" "Maybe drifting is okay," he says softly. "The river doesn't ask where it's going. It just moves, and everything it touches, it shapes." She stares for a long time, and something in her chest unclenches. Not because the mystery was solved, but because it was finally allowed to exist. This isn't a call to abandon responsibility. It's not an argument against choices, but it is a question about where those choices truly arise from. Neuroscience shows us that decisions often begin in the brain before we're even aware of them. A signal fires, then the mind invents a reason to justify it, like lightning striking, and only then thunder pretending it decided to roar. So, if the doing happens first and the awareness follows, are we really the one who acts or just the one who watches the acting? Is this life ours, or are we life being expressed in temporary form? Perhaps it's like a wind chime on a quiet porch. It doesn't make music by choice. It rings when the wind finds it. And yet, when it sings, it is fully alive. Let that image settle inside you, your breath, your movement, your emotion, like the shimmering notes of a wind chime. You didn't ask for this breeze, but here it is, and here you are, dancing in it. You are not behind the curtain, pulling the strings. You are the curtain, rippling with the unseen motion of the world. Now, let yourself float in that knowing. The next idea will not arrive because you will it into being, but because you are soft enough to let it arrive. Because surrender, not control, might be the truest form of participation. The space before the thought. There is a moment just before the thought. Not a second, not even a breath. More like a shimmer between still waters, where nothing has arrived, yet everything waits. It's easy to miss it, like trying to notice the silence before a piano note, or the exact instant your eyelids surrender to sleep. But it's there, not emptiness, not noise, something more subtle than both. She was sitting by the window one evening, the sky washing in deep lavender. He passed by with a tray of tea, paused, and looked at her face. "Are you thinking something right now?" he asked, half laughing. She blinked, then tilted her head. "I was about to, but I caught it before it landed." That's the place we're talking about. Not the thought, not the voice that narrates your day, or the story that explains who you are, but the place before it. A gentle, unclaimed field where no one has spoken yet. Science might say it's a neural pause, milliseconds of quiet before the brain fires. Mystics might call it the gateway of being. Children don't name it at all, but they live there often. In that space where attention hasn't decided yet. What if that pause is the real you? Not the thinker, not the idea, but the space that lets it bloom. It's like the blank page that holds every poem, or the hush between words in a tender conversation. It's presence, not personality, not your memories, not your goals, not even your voice. Just the place inside where thought is about to happen, but hasn't yet. A man once told me, "There's a part of me that feels more honest when I'm not thinking, like when I'm watching my daughter sleep, or when I'm stirring sugar into tea without needing it." He didn't know what to call that state. He just knew it felt more real than the rest of his day. In that stillness, there's no agenda, no judgment, just a quiet readiness. You are not trying to be anything. And strangely, that's when you feel most yourself. So here, in this space before the thought, you don't need to make sense. You don't need to reach back into memory or forward into intention. You can rest, not because you've finished, but because you never needed to begin. Let the next moment come when it wants to, or not at all. Because the stillness you're in right now, it's not waiting for anything. It is everything. Now slip gently into that hush. The next mystery doesn't use words. It breathes where names don't reach. The unnameable truth. There are truths we carry that have never touched the shape of a word. Like light filtering through closed eyelids, they are sensed, not seen. You feel them when standing alone beneath an endless night sky, when a single chord in a song breaks something open inside you, or when tears come, and you don't know why. There's no sentence for that kind of knowing. No dictionary thick enough to contain the rawness of a soul stirred awake. Language, beautiful as it is only a map. It draws the borders of what we understand, but never becomes the land itself. It can lead us close, but it cannot make us feel. The unnameable truth lives just beyond the reach of description, humming quietly beneath every moment we try too hard to explain. In trying to hold it, to box it, to label it, we often shrink it. One evening, sitting on a park bench with a friend, the silence between them spoke more than any story could. One of them whispered, "I don't know what I'm feeling." The other replied gently, "Maybe you don't need to." And in that brief exchange, something deeper was honored, something beyond diagnosis, beyond interpretation, just the raw weight of being. The mind wants certainty. It seeks the comfort of naming things, grief, joy, nostalgia, love. But the heart knows better. It knows that some feelings don't arrive with names. They arrive with a pulse, a presence, a pressure behind the ribs that can only be felt, not fixed. There is a quiet miracle in surrendering to the unnamed, to sit with a feeling and not interrogate it, to witness an experience without dissecting it, to let a truth exist wild and wide without fencing it in with vocabulary. Because sometimes naming is not understanding. Sometimes naming is a way of protecting ourselves from being fully touched. So, what if we stopped? What if, just for a moment, we let silence stretch wider than speech? Could you sit beside the unnameable truth and let it breathe next to you like a companion? Would you listen, not with your ears, but with your presence? In this stillness, something ancient stirs. A different kind of hearing awakens. The next glitch doesn't speak in words. It rises like a tide, slowly, surely, asking nothing but your quiet attention. Let it come. Let it be. And in that being, you may just remember what you never learned to say. The birthplace of silence. Sometimes the world goes quiet, not because sound has stopped, but because something else has arrived. It's easy to think silence is what's left when the noise is gone, like a blank page after a pen lifts. But real silence doesn't feel blank, does it? It hums, somehow. It listens back. It wraps around your shoulders like a presence you didn't know had been waiting. There's a certain kind of silence you hear when you're alone in a room after laughter fades, or the kind that settles between two people when words become too small for what they're feeling. That silence isn't empty. It's charged. It holds meaning without needing permission from language. A man stood in line at the pharmacy, lost in thought. Another stepped up beside him and asked nothing, only offered a soft smile, then stepped back in quiet understanding. That gesture said more than a sentence ever could. In that stillness, something real passed between them. It wasn't about being polite. It was about presence. So, is silence still silence if you can feel it? I think maybe silence is what listens when no one else does. There's a rhythm to quietude, not the absence of sound, but the echo of everything else fading away. Silence becomes the canvas where your inner world gets painted. When the external shrinks, the internal expands. And sometimes, that's the only way you notice what's been waiting to be heard all along. Is it possible that silence is the original voice? That before any word was spoken, there was only this, the awareness of being. Long before thought, before expression, just that steady hum, that attentive stillness. And maybe that's why people feel closest to something divine when sitting in nature, in prayer, in awe. Because the universe doesn't yell, it whispers, and silence is how it speaks. There's a kind of sacred hush that falls over a theater right before the curtain rises, a quiet charged with the anticipation of story. Not the story itself, just the space for it. That moment feels familiar, doesn't it? You've felt it just before tears fall, or when you're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling everything and nothing all at once. But here's the glitch. If silence is speaking, are you actually the one listening, or are you the thing being listened to? You might have noticed this at night, right before you fall asleep, the moment when the mind stops trying to solve and something deeper begins to understand. It's not logical. It's not even conscious. It's just known. And in that knowing, there are no words, only a stillness that feels like it's holding you, like it has always held you. So maybe silence isn't what happens when everything else goes away. Maybe it's what was always there, underneath it all, waiting, not to be heard, but to remind you that you were never unheard. And when you close your eyes tonight, let that silence wrap around you. Don't search for meaning in it. Let it find you. There is a soundless rhythm pulsing beneath the surface of every thought. And right now, it's playing for you. The next question doesn't arrive with a bang. It arrives like a shadow. Like something watching quietly in the corners, curious and patient. Close your eyes. The darkness is listening too. Awareness in the dark. Even when the lights go out and the world withdraws into silence, something remains. A sensation not of sight, but of being seen. A quiet presence pressing lightly on your skin, not with weight, but with attention. Close your eyes, and the darkness deepens. But strangely, so does the sense of being watched, not by something sinister, but by something eternal. You are not alone in the dark. The silence has a heartbeat, and it's listening. Do you ever feel like someone's looking at you, even when you're the only one in the room? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper as they lay side by side, staring at a ceiling they couldn't see. He smiled, eyes closed. Yeah, but it's not someone. It's something, like the room remembers us being there. Or like our own awareness keeps looping back at us, she murmured, tracing invisible circles on his palm. Exactly, he said. It's not a mirror. It's more like a field. a field of noticing, and we just happen to be floating in it. This awareness in the dark doesn't belong to the eyes. It isn't concerned with outlines or distance. It doesn't wait for light. It is the light, the kind that doesn't shine, but permeates. You sense it more in absence, when your senses have nothing to grasp onto, when your mind can no longer distract itself with color or form. That's when it appears. Or perhaps that's when you disappear, and it simply continues. The unsettling beauty of this awareness is how impersonal it feels. It doesn't belong to you. It's not your mind quietly whispering, "I'm awake." It's more like a stream running through everything, and for a while, you're just the cup that catches it. You close your eyes, and the visual world dies. But this watcher remains. Could it be that what we think of as our consciousness is just a momentary shape taken by something far larger, a temporary ripple in an endless ocean of presence? If so, then when you sit in the dark and feel seen, you are not going crazy. You are brushing up against what was always there, before your name, before your body, before your story. Awareness, pure and wordless. As the quiet stretches out and the walls dissolve, you no longer need to understand. You no longer ask who is watching or why. You simply rest inside the knowing that noticing continues even when you stop looking, that the dark is not empty, it is full of attention, and in that stillness, you are not alone. You are held. Breathe into that space. Let the darkness hold you gently. The next idea rises not from your mind, but from the rhythm of your breath. Soft, steady, sacred. The art of letting go. You don't always notice when you're holding on, until something aches. Maybe it's a thought that loops, or a memory that clings like a shadow too stubborn to dissolve. Maybe it's the way your jaw tightens during silence, or how your shoulders rise when no one's asking anything of you. We cling to who we were last year, to a version of ourselves that never arrived, to control, to clarity, to the illusion that we are the ones shaping the flow. But the body knows better. It exhales. Naturally, completely. Not with drama, not with resistance, but as a rhythm. Release is not a command. It's a remembering. Two strangers sit beside each other on a late-night train. One glances at the rain on the window and says quietly, "You ever feel like your thoughts are gripping your lungs?" The other smiles, eyes half closed. All the time. But every time I notice, I breathe out, and the thought lets go of me instead. It's not about detachment in the cold sense, not about erasing what matters. Letting go is not deletion. It's returning to a version of presence that isn't weighed down. When a wave crashes, the shore never holds it back. When a bird lands, the branch doesn't ask it to stay. So why do we grip our emotions like lifelines, forgetting that life itself keeps flowing regardless of our grasp? Letting go is not a weakness, it's a skill. And more than that, it's a form of trust. Trusting that when you release the reins, your feet still know the road. Trusting that grief won't vanish, but will soften into wisdom. Trusting that even if your hands are empty, your heart can remain full. You don't seem upset anymore, someone might whisper to you, surprised. You just tilt your head and answer gently, "I stopped arguing with the past." And somehow, that's enough. What happens when you stop resisting, but don't withdraw? When you show up fully, but without the armor? It's like exhaling after holding your breath all day. Not in panic, but in surrender. In that space, you don't lose control. You just stop mistaking tension for control. You don't lose identity. You just stop confusing survival patterns with selfhood, and the world doesn't collapse when you release it. It simply softens, reshapes, and breathes with you. So tonight, let go. Not of your dreams, but of the strain around them. Not of people, but of needing them to be anything other than what they are. Let go like the tide, like music fading into silence, not vanishing, just becoming something else. And when the silence arrives, don't fill it. Rest inside it. Because maybe, just maybe, what awakens in that stillness is what's been waiting for you all along. Our next question will rise from that quiet, where even rest has its own consciousness. The self that awakes after you sleep. When you drift off into dreamless sleep, something unusual happens. Not in your room, not in your body, but in your sense of self. The one who worries, the one who plans, the one who replays memories late into the night, quietly fades. It's as if you, the narrator of your waking life, dissolves into silence. And yet, your heart keeps beating. Your lungs rise and fall with the breath of something deeper, something that does not need your name to keep going. Have you ever noticed that? That the body doesn't ask your permission to stay alive? Even in the thickest sleep, when no dream flickers behind your eyelids, life continues without you. Or maybe without the version of you that thinks it's in charge. So what is that which remains? Not your thoughts, not your personality, not your voice, but a hum of presence, a rhythm beneath the story. Earlier tonight, two friends spoke softly beneath a shared blanket of stars. Do you ever feel like when you're asleep, you're gone? One whispered, eyes half closed. The other thought for a moment. Number, I feel like something's still there. Just not thinking. Not me, but something quiet. Watching. Like a ghost? More like the sky. Just there, open, holding everything, even in silence. That silence, dreamless, wordless, is not emptiness. It's not absence. It's a return. A return to what watches the storm of thought from beneath it. A return to the still witness, the quiet keeper, the sacred rhythm behind all stories. You could call it awareness. Or maybe it doesn't need a name. This is a glitch in consciousness most people miss. The idea that sleep is the end of self. But what if it's the other way around? What if your most real self is the one that remains when the thinking stops? What if the deepest truth of you isn't in the voice that speaks, but in the listening that stays behind when it falls silent? It's humbling to consider that all our identities, all the things we think define us, can pause, and yet, something is still awake in the quiet, a guardian of breath, a silent flame. And maybe, just maybe, that presence doesn't sleep at all. It only waits for you to rest, waits for the noise to soften, waits to remind you that before the thoughts, before the roles, before the fears, you were already here. Now, rest in that awareness. No need to search. You are already held. In the next segment, we'll step even deeper into the sacred stillness that remembers what you once knew before forgetting became survival. The sacred secret in stillness. You don't have to earn stillness. You don't have to chase it like a prize. It's already here, quietly waiting beneath the friction of your thoughts. At first, it might feel like an absence, but listen longer, and you'll hear something deeper than sound. Stillness isn't the lack of movement, it's the presence behind it. The pause between two heartbeats that somehow contains everything. There's a kind of hush that lives beneath language, a vast, breathing space inside you that doesn't ask for anything. It's not the silence of nothingness. It's the silence that listens back. Two friends sat together on a park bench. One had been through a loss, the other just showed up. No advice, no stories, just their shared breath in the soft shade of a tree. Do you think saying nothing is ever enough? I think sometimes it's the only thing that is. That's the kind of stillness we're talking about. It's not about zoning out. It's about zoning in to that inner temple where nothing is built, and yet everything belongs. You might think silence means emptiness, but inside it, whole galaxies turn. The sacred secret is this: when you finally stop trying to be someone, when you release the performance, the effort, the noise, you arrive. No spotlight, no applause, just presence, just this. And strangely, this is where you feel most you. You've probably touched it before. In the early hours before the world wakes. In a glance that didn't need words. In a breath so deep, it felt like the first one you ever took. It isn't about retreating. It's about returning to the unspoken knowing that doesn't need proof, to the home that doesn't require directions. You were never separate from it, only distracted. A stranger held the elevator door. No nod, no thank you, just a quiet act of holding space. That too was stillness. That too was sacred. So ask yourself, what if the truth you've been chasing, the insight, the clarity, the peace, wasn't far off, waiting to be earned? What if it was simply resting in the silence you avoid? And what if that silence wasn't a void, but a mirror? It doesn't matter if your thoughts are noisy tonight. Let them swirl, soften, and sink. The stillness will still be here, patient as moonlight. Rest there, not as someone meditating, not as someone fixing, just as someone being. Let that stillness cradle you now. No need to hold on. It already holds you. The next thought you meet won't arrive with sound. It will rise like mist from a forgotten shore, soft, wordless, and whole. The sound of being watched. You sit alone in a quiet room. No footsteps, no voices, just you, and yet something else. A subtle hum beneath silence, a rustle in stillness. It's not fear, not quite. It's more like a pressure behind your thoughts, like someone or something is listening, just out of reach. You glance around, nothing changes, but you still feel it, that faint sensation of being observed, as if existence itself has ears. In the forest it's stronger. The trees don't move, but they seem to lean closer. The wind doesn't speak, but somehow it replies. That odd feeling that you're not alone isn't new. It trails your steps like a shadow. Maybe we've inherited it, this ancient radar, from ancestors who once slept with one eye open. Or maybe it's something deeper. What if the watcher isn't out there? What if the presence is you, looping back from a higher vantage point? Like a camera that captures both actor and audience, consciousness may curve inward, folding in on itself until subject and object merge. You aren't just being watched. You're watching yourself. Did you hear that? Hear what? I don't know. It wasn't a sound exactly. More like a knowing. A knowing? Yeah, like something noticed I was here, even before I noticed myself. Maybe that something was you. Then who am I when I'm not noticing? When you're alone, you expect quiet. But sometimes quiet carries its own resonance. It's the sound of your own awareness echoing back. It might disguise itself as paranoia or a trick of the senses, but it's not quite either. It's more like a presence behind the curtain of your mind peeking through. In those moments, your ego feels like a guest. There's something older in the room, something still. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move. It just sees. And being seen changes you. So, what if awareness isn't owned? What if it flows like air, sometimes gathering inside you, other times whispering through the world? That feeling of being watched may not be evidence of another, but a mirror of your own depth. A glance, not from outside, but from a part of you that doesn't need eyes. Let yourself lean into that gaze now. Don't flinch. Don't analyze. Just be with it. Something ancient is awake inside your stillness, watching gently, as if it always has. And as you soften into that feeling, something flickers ahead, something familiar, like a flame you've seen before, but never quite touched. Let it guide you to the next unfolding mystery. The Ghost of Innocence. You once saw tigers in the carpet, faces in the curtain folds. A shimmer behind your bedroom door wasn't just light, it was something watching over you. You didn't need reasons. You didn't need proof. Everything was real because you felt it. Somewhere in that tiny chest, your heart beat in rhythm with the world, open, unedited. You laughed too loud, cried too fast, asked too many questions. That wasn't confusion. That was presence, raw and unafraid. You didn't wait for permission to feel joy. You let it spill. But something happened. A word here, a warning there. Don't be weird. Grow up. That's not how the world works. And slowly, like water eroding stone, the magic got explained away, labeled, silenced. There's a conversation happening on a quiet park bench. One person leans in and says softly, "You know, I used to talk to trees." Not like talk, just felt like they listened. The other doesn't laugh. They nod, eyes gentle. Maybe they still do. Maybe we're just louder now. We were trained out of our wonder. That child you were, so curious, so soft, wasn't naive. They were whole, untouched by shame. Before there was an audience, you danced because it felt good. You sang off key and it was enough. We call it growing up, but often it's just building fences. The ones that say, act normal and don't be seen too clearly. And over time, that glowing presence gets wrapped in roles, jobs, obligations. The innocence fades, not because it's gone, but because it was tucked away for safekeeping. Now sometimes, in quiet moments, you feel it again. Not as a memory, but as a pull, a softness, like something behind your ribs still believes in talking to shadows and twirling in silence. There's a woman at a bookstore who pauses by the children's section. She smiles, not at the titles, but at a memory. A part of her that used to believe dragons lived under the stairs. She touches the spine of a dusty fairy tale. Just a second, then lets go. To remember isn't to regress. It's to return, not backwards, but inward, to the part of you that never forgot how to play. The part that doesn't ask if the moment is appropriate, just if it's alive. What if innocence wasn't something to shed, but something to shelter? What if the adult you was never meant to replace the child, but protect them? What would your life feel like if you let that part of you peek through, just a little, on ordinary days? Even now, the child is watching, patient, smiling, waiting for you to look their way. Let that smile rise quietly behind your eyes. The next segment arrives gently, with a question you once knew by heart, the dream you left behind. Where did it go? And why did you stop chasing it? The dreams you abandoned. In the quiet hour, when the world softens and the ceiling becomes a canvas for your thoughts, something stirs. It's not a sound, not a shadow. It's the echo of something you once loved deeply. A dream. Not the kind you slip into during sleep, but the kind that once kept you awake with excitement. Maybe it was a life you thought you'd live, a version of you who made music, wrote books, opened a cafe by the ocean. Whatever it was, it didn't die. It simply went quiet. You didn't mean to abandon it. Life just got louder. Bills arrived. Expectations stacked up like unopened letters. Practicality replaced passion. But some nights, especially nights like this, there's a whisper behind the silence. A gentle voice that doesn't blame you, only asks, "Are you still there?" "Do you ever think about it?" she asks him softly in the dark, their room lit only by the slow rise and fall of the city light outside. "Think about what?" he replies, though he already knows. "The thing you used to dream of doing." He doesn't answer right away. His hand rests on his chest, feeling the beat of something old and still somehow alive. "Yeah, sometimes. It still feels close. Like if I turned fast enough, I'd see it standing behind me." That's the strange thing about dreams. The ones that mattered, the ones that truly belong to you, don't vanish. They become quieter, yes, but they linger in your muscle memory, in the subtle ache you feel when someone else lives a life you once imagined for yourself. They rest behind your smile when you tell yourself you're fine, even when a part of you aches with what could have been. But here's the glitch. If something inside you still feels that ache, then it's not over. That pain is not a wound, it's a tether, a pulse from a parallel version of you that never gave up. What if the dream still believes in you? What if it's not asking for a grand leap, but a quiet return? You don't have to start where you left off. Dreams evolve, so do you. And maybe now, with gentler hands and a wiser heart, you can approach them not with urgency, but with reverence. You can return not as the person who abandoned them, but as someone who understands why you had to pause. "Do you think it's too late?" she murmurs again, eyes half closed. He turns toward her, not with certainty, but with softness. Maybe, or maybe it's just quieter now, waiting for me to listen. In that stillness, let the whisper rest. Not every silence is an ending. Sometimes it's just the breath before the return. And just beyond that hush, something else watches. Something not from the past, but rooted firmly in the now. Ready, patient, alive. The final question. You've made it through so much thought, so many layers, so many rooms in the mind you didn't even know were there. But now, there's nothing left to explain. Just a hum in the quiet, a single presence that never had a name. Beneath the roles, beneath the patterns, beneath the usernames and passwords and routines that made up your day, there's still something. It didn't get filtered by algorithms. It doesn't ask for attention. It simply notices. Notices the way the blanket folds over your leg, the way your chest rises, how your thoughts slow, uncoiling like old ribbon. It's not the part of you that wants, or speaks, or even dreams. It's older than memory. Not you as someone, but you as presence. Two people on a late-night train might catch this feeling. No words. Just a glance, like both suddenly remembered something they never spoke aloud. One leans back, rubbing tired eyes. The other half smiles and says, "We're still here, huh?" And they both nod, not because they agree, but because they know. That knowing, the one behind all the others, is the final glitch. It's not flashy. It doesn't expose a lie in the system. It just endures. When you're not trying to be seen, when the performance falls away, when there's no mirror, no audience, no script, there's still that quiet thing. That you. It doesn't need to understand or prove anything. You can lose the plot, forget the characters, abandon the structure of who you thought you were. And yet, this watcher remains, still, patient, breathing through you. Even in a world where your choices are forecasted, your clicks anticipated, your identity sliced into digestible patterns, this part of you is unrecorded, unreduced. The final question is not what happens next. It's not about safety or freedom. It's not even about meaning. It's, are you still here? Not the name you answer to, not the job you try to keep, not the version they measured, just here. Maybe the whole journey wasn't about becoming someone. Maybe it was about remembering the one who was never lost, the one still listening now. So if your breath is slowing, if your eyes are soft, if your body is ready to blur into rest, let go. You've touched the still point at the center of all this movement. Let the questions dissolve. Let even this awareness rest. You don't have to hold on. Sleep isn't forgetting. It's trusting. Let your mind soften into the folds of night. No need to respond. No need to be anything more than this. Presence. Still here. Still whole. Still yours. We'll meet again in whatever dream doesn't ask for answers. The fold in reality. It starts small, a breath out of sync, a name on your tongue that doesn't belong. You reach for your phone, and it's not where you just placed it. But then, it is, right there, where it always was. Yet something inside you insists. No, that wasn't how it happened. Sometimes, reality bends, not outward like a crooked mirror, but inward, like a fold in thought. These are not dramatic cracks in the sky or tears in time. No, they're quiet, subtle hums in the pattern. A light flickers once, then again, and you wonder if it was the bulb or your memory that failed. A clock skips a beat. You hear your own voice echo, but no one else notices. And deep in your chest, you feel it. Not fear, not confusion, but a kind of holy pause, like the universe hiccuped. Two friends sit on a bench, sipping tea under a pale morning sky. Didn't we have this exact conversation yesterday? One asks softly. The other smiles, uneased. No, but it feels like we did. Déjà vu again? Or maybe reality just hiccuped. They laugh, but there's a silence afterward, thoughtful, tender, because they both know the moment didn't quite behave. These glitches, so easily dismissed, aren't always errors. They might be invitations to notice the seams, the threadwork behind the illusion. What if every skipped second is a loop trying to close? What if reality is less like a straight line and more like a folded cloth, creased in places, softening in others, where thought and time double back and echo, and where truth is not lost, only hidden in the bend? We often say, perception is reality. But if that's true, then when perception distorts, even for a blink, does reality shift with it? Is the world truly objective? Or is it co-authored by the eyes that see it? If your memory misplaces a moment, if your senses collide with themselves, have you just witnessed a crack, a fold, a skip in the code? You don't have to panic. These slips don't mean you're broken. Quite the opposite. They're signs of awareness sharpening its edge. The mind noticing its own loops, consciousness stepping outside of script. Close your eyes. Let the lines blur, just for now. Let reality rest from its duty of coherence. The next thought won't arrive through logic or control. It will come gently when you stop searching and begin to surrender. The endless search. There's a silence that lingers between questions, a pause, a hesitation. You've likely felt it before. late at night, staring at the ceiling, eyes open not from fear, but from hunger, not for food, not for company, but for a knowing, a completion. As if some answer, if only it would arrive, could let your breath finally fall asleep. The mind, in its quiet desperation, reaches for certainty, for meaning. It tries to wrap itself around something solid, an explanation, a pattern, a truth. Like a child groping for the edge of a bed in the dark, it seeks something to hold on to before it allows itself to rest. Two travelers sat beside each other on a late train. Strangers, really, until the hum of the tracks made their silence shared. One turned and asked, "Do you think we ever really figure things out? Or do we just get tired of asking?" The other didn't look up, just replied softly, "Maybe we stop asking when we start feeling." This is where the glitch begins. The endless search for clarity is a loop, one we walk in by instinct, a maze with mirrors. Every answer reflects another question, and certainty slips just out of reach like steam from your morning tea. And yet, you continue. Not because you are lost, but because something deep within you believes meaning must exist. And if you just think hard enough, you'll find it. But what if the real truth is that meaning isn't something to be found? What if it's something you feel? The way you feel the sunlight on your skin without needing to measure its warmth? What if it's less like a conclusion and more like a song? There are things you've experienced, songs, touches, glances that changed you, and you couldn't explain why. They didn't hand you answers. They gave you presence. And the most sacred part of the mind isn't the part that solves, but the part that surrenders, that bows its head gently and whispers, "I don't need to know to belong here." So maybe your mind isn't broken for circling questions. Maybe it's simply echoing a deeper longing, not to understand everything, but to be held by something that doesn't need to be explained. As you listen now, notice that pull in your chest, not the anxiety to solve, but the longing to feel. You don't have to name it. Just stay with it. Let it expand like breath. Let it soften like dusk over a quiet town. Outside, the world continues. People pass one another with coffee cups and deadlines and half-remembered dreams. But somewhere in that blur, a moment pauses. A door held open, a kind word, a look that says, "You're not the only one searching." And maybe that's enough. You're not here to conquer the mystery. You're here to feel it, to live inside the question like a flame lives inside a lantern, flickering, glowing, and moving softly with the wind. Rest in that warmth now. Let go of the need to grip it. The next truth won't come as an answer, but as a hush, soft as a hand brushing across your back as you drift into the not knowing. Distorted realities. A door slams, a word is spoken, a glance is shared, and yet, two people carry away two entirely different worlds. It begins so subtly that we almost never question it. You were there, so was I. But somehow, what I remember is not what you recall. For you, the room was tense, the voice too loud, the silence afterward filled with meaning. But for me, it was nothing. A passing moment, forgettable, empty. This is the glitch, the realization that reality is not a shared stage, but 1,000 private theaters flickering behind our eyes. Do you remember what he said? I do, she replied softly, but not the way you mean. What do you mean? I mean, it didn't sound the same to me. We don't see with eyes. We see with everything we've lived. Memory leans in, rearranges the scene, and emotion gives it color. Even silence is different for each of us. What felt warm to one might feel cold to another. A shared meal, a sunset, a single sentence. None of them arrive untouched. Beliefs filter what's allowed in. Wounds twist what we hear. Hopes stretch what we wish were true. When watching the same film twice, once when your heart is full, and once when it's broken, isn't it a different movie? That's what happens with reality, not just over time, but right now, side by side. Side by side, we walk through the same streetlight, but one of us sees threat, the other sees beauty. So where is truth? Is it what the camera would record? Even a camera has a frame, a lens, a setting, choices that shape what is captured and what is not. If every truth is shaped, then are we living in distortion? Or are we simply swimming through a sea of overlapping dreams, brushing against each other like shadows that sometimes align? There is a quiet ache to this insight. It means you may never truly be understood. It means even love, at its most sincere, is translating between universes. But it also means you are not wrong for how you saw it, and neither are they. You were just looking through different windows of the same shifting house. He looked at her, brow furrowed. So, were we both right? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence agreed for her. Let this contradiction rest in you. There is no need to resolve it. Let it float, gently. Two waves moving in opposite directions, never clashing, only crossing. Because the next glitch is not outside. It's not about the world. It's about the loop you didn't notice inside yourself. And how often you mistake it for something real. Eternal recurrence. What if nothing ever truly ended? Not the arguments, not the quiet kisses, not the smell of wet earth after rain or the ache behind your eyes when you hear a song that once meant everything. What if this life, exactly as it is, every heartbeat, every awkward pause, every half-finished thought, wasn't a fleeting thing, but a loop, and not just once, but forever? You brush your teeth in the dim bathroom light, the same mirror, the same tiny crack near the edge. You've looked at it every day, never thinking twice. But tonight, something about that crack feels like a crack in the script itself. There's a question Nietzsche once placed in your hands, though you didn't realize it at the time. If everything were to return again and again, would you still say yes to it? Would you nod through the sleepless nights and the unexpected kindness? Would you still pick the same coffee, the same lovers, the same way you always apologize even when you're not wrong? Two friends sit at a bench near a quiet lake. One picks at a sandwich. The other stares out across the rippling water. If this is forever, one says softly, I want to stop pretending I don't care. The other doesn't speak. Just leans in and presses their shoulder gently against theirs. No wisdom, just wait. That's the thing about recurrence. It doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for truth. Because if you knew this Tuesday would come again, would you still doom it to distraction? If every sigh was to be repeated eternally, would you allow it to carry sorrow or release? There's something sacred in the ordinary when it's seen as permanent. The dishes left in the sink, the message left unread, the warmth in your palms when holding a cup that you love, though you've never said so out loud. A young woman on a train meets eyes with a stranger. They smile, small, not flirty, just real. It's the third time she's noticed him in the same seat. Funny, she says. Feels like déjà vu. Maybe it is, he replies. Or maybe time just likes to loop back to what we didn't finish. If eternity rests in repetition, then meaning isn't in novelty, it's in attention. It's how you greet your morning breath, how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. Would you carry more grace if you knew this was your 1000th return? Would you speak more gently to the version of you who will have to hear it again and again? Sometimes the glitch isn't the loop. It's the way we pretend it's linear. The illusion that life only moves forward makes us careless with the present. But if this is the 100th time you've read these words, then maybe it's time to respond. Not with answers, not with declarations, but with the softest yes, the kind that needs no explanation, just presence. Let that yes settle like snow. Let it melt through regret. Let it color everything ordinary with the hue of forever. And now, listen closely. The next and final idea isn't a loop. It's the stillness beneath the spinning, not about time, but about simply being. The door that never closed. Even now, as the edges of thought soften and the world fades to a hush, something within you remains gently aware. It's not loud, it doesn't speak, but it watches with a presence older than memory. Maybe you felt it before, in the in-between moments, when you weren't quite asleep and not fully awake. That sliver of silence where nothing is demanded of you. Only being. You've walked through a long corridor tonight, one made of paradoxes, quiet echoes, half-forgotten truths. And yet, there was never a destination to reach. This wasn't about solving riddles. It was about softening into them, letting them hum in your bones without needing to be named. Every consciousness glitch along the way was never a flaw. It was a threshold, a small doorway into deeper awareness, one you didn't need to fix or shut, only notice. Do you think it ever ends? One voice murmurs, low and close. The other replies, what? The thinking? No, the watching. That part of you that's still there, even when everything else goes quiet. Maybe that's the real you, the one who never leaves. This conversation might as well have happened in your chest. It might still be unfolding behind your closed eyes, because even as your muscles loosen and the breath finds its gentle rhythm, there's a part of you that simply witnesses, not to judge, not to fix, just to see. You drifting, you letting go, you becoming still. You see, this was never a journey toward clarity. It was a descent into trust, into unknowing, into the sacred space where nothing needs to be figured out, only felt. And in that feeling, something opens, something ancient and familiar, not a door that creaks or swings wide, but one that was never truly closed. And that's the final truth, isn't it? You are never completely asleep, not in the way you think, because something stays, a soft flame that keeps the watch, a breath that pulses without command, a kindness that sees you not as a problem to solve, but as a mystery worth holding. So now, no more questions, no more wondering, no more reaching. Let the world continue its spinning. Let tomorrow come when it does. Tonight, the breath is enough. You are enough. You are home. And so, we arrive, not at an answer, but at a gentle uncertainty. Somewhere along these 100 glitches, you may have noticed, consciousness doesn't always behave. It folds, it flickers, it forgets. But maybe that's the beauty of it. Like stars winking through a fogged sky, these mind errors remind us we were never meant to fully grasp the universe, only to be with it. Tonight, let the questions stay unanswered. Let your awareness dissolve like moonlight into water. Let go of the need to fix, name, or know, because the most sacred truths don't shout, they whisper. And sometimes the deepest wisdom is the silence that watches you sleep.